time is 9:04 a.m. It's Saturday, March 29th. I'm going to call a special city council meeting to order. Would the city secretary please call the roll?
Mitchell.
Here.
Heiser.
Here.
Rizzo. Zuniga.
Present.
Harris.
Here.
McKinney.
Here.
Tobias.
Froze.
He's frozen.
All right, let the record show Tobias's recording is here. All right. Next up is citizen comments period. Is there anyone who wishes to come forward in citizen comments? Seeing none, it's now closed. Next up, reports and presentations. Receive a report, hold discussion, provide staff direction regarding the draft 2025 Water Master Plan for the City of Kyle. Mike Murphy.
Good morning, Council. Mike Murphy, Director of Water Utilities. This is a really big day for City of Kyle and the Water Utilities Department in particular. We're at the completion point of our Water Master Plan. And so what we have for you this morning is the engineer that we selected to do the master plan study. And so we're going to start with introductions of the engineering firm STV Engineering. And I'm going to turn it over to Ryan Owens, who's been the lead on this project. So, Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy, and good morning, Mayor, Council. Appreciate the opportunity to be here this morning to provide an update on the Water Master Plan. My name is Ryan Owen with STV, serving as the project manager. I'm also joined this morning by Phil Cook with STV, who led the water supply planning portion of this project. Also, Gil Barnett, who led the infrastructure evaluation and hydraulic modeling. I'm also joined by Marisa Vergara, our technical advisor and principal on the project, and James Beach, our hydrogeologist and groundwater expert. There's a lot of material to cover this morning. We'll generally break this down into two main portions, the water supply section and an infrastructure section. Then we'll end by summarizing our recommendations and next steps. So wanted to start with just the general purpose of a water master plan. In general, a water master plan acts as a roadmap that lays out the long-term vision and actions necessary to manage a community's water resources and water infrastructure. It's essentially, what do we have? Where are we going, and how do we get there for water planning? So as part of this project, our team evaluated the city's current water sources, evaluated the existing water distribution system, which led to recommendations for improvements to meet future conditions. Also explored the framework to acquire additional water to meet the demands of the city at future build-out. And then the final section of the Water Master Plan is to provide guidance on future capital projects. Wanted to quickly summarize a project timeline. Our team received a notice to proceed in March of 2024, about a year ago, and there were several concurrent activities that took place over the last year. Our team developed a citywide hydraulic model to essentially mimic the city's water system. That included field calibration and coordination with city staff to make sure that the hydraulic model and the city system were operating in alignment so that we could accurately predict what was happening. Worked with planning and development teams at the city for development of the water demand projections. We assessed current, planned, and potential future water supply sources. And that led to the development of a capital improvement plan and a water master plan. And that draft document is what was included in the council materials today. So today we'll be kind of walking through the general evaluation and findings that are included in that draft report. So to start, this graph shows the daily water usage for the city of Kyle from January 1st, 2018 to December 31st, 2024. A couple of things just wanted to point out. The blue line is the water usage each day. It follows pretty typical seasonal usage patterns for a water system. Lower demand in the winter months, higher demand in the hotter, drier summer months. The orange line shows the average water usage per day for each year. And so from 2018 through about 2022, that kind of steps up, obviously denoting an increase over time reflective of the growth in Kyle. In 2023 and 2024, that average line generally flattens out, not to show that growth hasn't been occurring, but essentially the result of additional water conservation. One thing to note in 2024, the highest line of that year is quite a bit lower than the highest line or the maximum day in 2022 or 2023. And that is also just an indication that the water conservation measures that are currently in place are working as intended. So now we'll get into an overview of the water supply evaluation. And to get into that, wanted to provide just an overview of some terminology that'll be used in the next couple of sections. For the supply component, we'll talk about the total permitted supply and the total firm supply. The total permitted water supply is the amount that's contractually available to the city in a calendar year. The firm supply is the total permitted water supply available to the city with maximum drought reductions in place. Wanted to note each of the city's current water supply permits have varying levels of reduction in times of drought. And so we'll get into how that impacts each permit throughout the presentation. When we focus on the current water supply that the city has in future slides and throughout the report, we really focus on the firm supply because that's the lowest amount of water that could be available to the city in the worst case drought. Moving on to the demand section, we'll be talking about the annual demand and the maximum day demand. The annual demand is essentially the orange average line that we saw on the previous slide. And the maximum day demand is the highest use day in a calendar year. These two components are very critical to make sure that the supply is available for both demand conditions. Next, the units. We'll be mostly focusing in this presentation on million gallons per day. There's also a unit of acre feet per year. This is a common unit that's used in water supply planning and water permits, but for the purposes of consistency, we'll be looking at annual and max day throughout the presentation in terms of million gallons per day, or MGD. Next, this is a snapshot of the city's current water supply portfolio as of today. The city currently has groundwater supplies permitted through the Edwards Aquifer Authority and Barton Springs Edwards Aquifer Conservation District, as well as surface water through the GBRA. The pie chart on the left shows the percentage of each supply, totaling 6.65 million gallons per day, or 7,450 acre feet per year. The table shows the maximum mandatory reductions that each permit could apply to the city depending on either the aquifer level or the surface water level for GBRA, which results in the pie chart on the right, the total firm supply, which would include a reduction up to 39% of the supply, resulting in 4.09 million gallons per day. And in just over a month, I believe early May, the ARWA Alliance Phase 1B project is scheduled to be online. That project will deliver an additional 1.73 million gallons per day of firm supply. Then as additional phases of the Alliance project come online, anticipated the Phase 1C, 1D project in 2027, as well as the Phase 2 project in 2032. Over time, In 2027, the firm supply increases to 9.62 million gallons per day, and in 2032, increases again to 12.66 million gallons per day. One important thing to note as these pie charts progress is as more Alliance supply comes online for the city of Kyle, the amount of potential drought reduction decreases. And so the firm supply as a percentage of the city's total permitted supply gets larger, which is a big benefit in a drought condition.
Can you explain why that is? Why does the firm supply from Alliance Water not have drought issues, potentialities causing it to be reduced in a drought period?
Yeah, the Carrizo Wilcox is considered a drought resilient supply. The Edwards Aquifer is very prone to water movement, which makes it more prone to drought. The Carrizo Wilcox Aquifer is deeper and confined in an area that isn't subjected to as much influence from the weather, the rainfall. And so for that reason, that water source doesn't have drought restrictions like the other surface water and groundwater sources. So next, we'll just provide a snapshot of each of the water supply sources. The Edwards Aquifer permit permits the operation of wells number 1, 2, 3, and 5. This permit allows up to 432 acre-feet per year, or just under 0.4 million gallons per day. The important thing about this permit is it's based on a calendar year, and so when that water is used is completely up to the city. And so that's a benefit during hotter summer months, so you can essentially save that water for when you need it most. But this source does allow up to 44% reduction, and that's directly based on the aquifer levels of the San Antonio pool of the Edwards. And then just as a point of reference, this supply is currently in stage 4. Next, the Barton Springs Edwards Aquifer Conservation District. This is the source of the water for the city's well number 4. This source provides up to 0.96 million gallons per day of permitted supply. There is a potential for up to 76.4% total reduction. This permit is based on monthly allocations, which does allow for more water to be taken in July and August as compared to January, February, as an example. And then again, as a point of reference, this supply is currently in stage 3, or 53.8% total reduction. Next, and currently the city's largest water supply is from Canyon Lake through GBRA. This source provides up to 4.86 million gallons per day. This supply is based on daily limits, and so that 4.86 is what's allowed every day, whether it's January or August. This permit currently allows for a reduction of up to 30%, and that's directly based on the water elevation in the Canyon Reservoir. And again, as a reference, this water supply is currently at 15% total reduction. And just to mention the combined total of all of these current reductions, the city's current supply as of today with the reductions that are in place is 5.07 MGD. Next, the city currently has 2 agreements in place with the city of San Marcos. One is the Edwards Aquifer Authority Agreement to allow for up to 500 acre-feet per year. This agreement is in place through 2026. There's also currently an interconnect agreement that allows up to 500,000 gallons per day if needed for peak flows. This also requires specific coordination between the cities, and the city of San Marcos would need to agree in advance. And so for that reason, we don't include this supply as one of the city's kind of annual water supply permits in the portfolio. Next, a summary of the phases of the Alliance project. This is a significant part of the city's planned water supply. The Phase 1B project, as mentioned, is going to add 1.73 million gallons per day. The Phase 1C1D is 2.04, and Phase 2 is 5.03 MGD for a total of 8.8 MGD. As referenced on the previous slide, the current firm supply is just over 4 MGD, and so a significant increase to the overall supply portfolio. In addition to the projects that the contracts that the city currently has as part of the Alliance program, the city is currently in discussions with Alliance partners for near-term water agreements for additional supply. One of the great benefits of the Alliance program is that the infrastructure is in place, and so agreements like this that can occur to kind of share water, transfer water as needed through these agreements. There is one of these agreements on the agenda for today's meeting as agenda item number 4 for some short-term water through Green Valley. For the purposes of this study, we assumed that through this partnering, the city of Kyle would be potentially adding 1 million gallon per day in 2026 and 2 MGD from 2027 to 2031. And so the next slide essentially summarizes all of these different supplies, the existing supplies, the planned supplies, the planned partnering agreements, and puts it kind of stacked up with each supply per year. And so 2024 essentially represents the current supply today. The light blue to white gradient line on top is the total permitted supply. And so the amount of water available to the city could be anywhere from the solid line up to the top of the white, but for planning purposes, we're using the solid line. And as you can see, the Alliance water is a significant piece of the city's plan over the next several years. So that was a look at the annual permitted supply. As mentioned, also looked at the maximum day demand. As mentioned, some of the permits only allow a daily amount to be drawn, whether it's the low demand period or the high demand period. Other permits, like the groundwater permits, allow more water to be used in the summertime versus the winter time, which this is to be optimized by the city to meet the max day demands. This table is included in the report. It includes each supply's annual firm supply, as well as the max day firm supply. And really the top three, the Edwards Aquifer Authority, the Barton Springs, and the GBRA allow a little bit more to be taken during peak times. And so the end result for the maximum day demand is represented here on the chart. It's the same sources. One thing to point out is how much more Edwards and Barton Springs water shows up at the bottom. I'll pause here for a second and then go back to the average day where it's a sliver of the annual usage, but such a tremendous resource during the higher demand summer months. And so once our team established the current and planned water supply, we looked to the water demand projections to see how that compared. A couple of things to note: the City of Kyle's water service area, or CCN, which is the Certificate of Convenience and Necessity. This is a permit issued by the Texas PUC that gives the City of Kyle the exclusive right to provide water within that geographical boundary. There are portions of the city which are served by other water providers or included within other water providers' CCN. And so just wanted to clarify that when we talk about City of Kyle water, we're only talking about the area within the water CCN. So to develop the demand projections, we coordinated the development locations and the growth rates through 2038, which was the time period at which, through coordination with city planning and development teams, was felt to be a time frame that could be estimated on an annual, more detailed rate. Then beyond that year, we used the Kyle 2030 Comprehensive Plan Future Land Use Map to establish the intended future land use of the remaining areas within the water CCN to establish full build-out. Then water demands are calculated based on a unit called a living unit equivalent, or LUE, and this is described in a little bit more detail on this next slide. So a LUE, or living unit equivalent, is the unit that we use in water planning for the development of water projections. All developments within the city are converted to the equivalent of the estimated water use of one single family home, which is assumed to include 3 people. Based on historical data and coordination with the city utility team, the water usage per LUE was determined to be an average of 270 gallons per day. And so through coordination with the planning and development groups, we coordinated to project the future units, convert those units to LUEs, and convert the LUEs to gallon per minute, or MGD water demand. So included here is just one example for a development that is projected to require 1,000 LUEs. At 270 gallons per day, 1,000 LUEs would result in 270,000 gallons per day, or 0.27 MGD. Also, based on historical data within the city's water demand usage, the maximum day demand, which is again the peak usage day out of a calendar year, was established at 1.69 times the average day demand. And so that number is 1.69 times the calculated average day demand. So this map provides a kind of snapshot of the process to getting to the estimate of full build-out of the city's water CCN. The bold boundary just identifies that water CCN boundary. The gray shaded area identifies the City of Kyle ETJ, and then there's some additional areas within the City of Kyle limits which are not included in the bold shape. So the different colors, the meaning is the light green is intended to represent the floodplain, which was removed from the demand projections based on the floodplain being undevelopable. The dark green and the orange are the future development and active development cases that was coordinated in detail with the planning and development groups. The tan color is the existing development within the city. And then the color scheme under the Land Use 2030 title in the legend represents the kind of remaining infill development utilizing estimated LUEs per acre based on land use from the comprehensive plan. And a summary of the resulting growth rates. From 2024 to 2028, a growth rate of 9% was established. The next 5 years, 8.25%, and the following 5 years, 8%. Based on those known developments, that gets the build-out, or the City of Kyle's water CCN to about 80% build-out. At that time, the growth rate tapers down a little bit, which is typical at that time and as the city grows, to a 3% growth rate over the next 5 years, 2% growth rate through 2048. And then at that time, the city, based on these water demand projections, would reach build-out. The result of the demand projections from those growth rates is shown in the second table. Just a couple of highlights from 2024, the average day demand is just about 5 MGD. That essentially doubles by 2033, triples by 2038, and then full build-out is roughly 4 times 2024 estimated water usage. One thing I want to mention before going to the next slide, the actual usage from 2024, the average day demand was 4.1 MGD, and the max day demand was 5.66. I mention this because that includes the current conservation that's in place. And so that resulted in roughly a 20% reduction in average day demand and a 30% reduction in maximum day demand. And this slide shows the demand projections as compared to the existing and planned supplies. The reason this is shown through 2038 is that includes the detailed planning period for the demands. One thing to note, the timing of the Alliance projects is very well aligned with this growth rate. Both the Phase 1C, 1D project in 2027 and Phase 2 in 2032. One note on the 2 demand lines, the top darker kind of maroon line, that's the kind of straight line projected annual demand based on historical usage within the city. The lighter orange line includes a 20% conservation. That generally matches what was reviewed in 2024. The intent of this is really to show a demand spectrum. Various conservation measures can be put into place, a variety of conservation measures with a spectrum of goals. And so the purpose of showing the 2 lines is to show the firm supply as well as a spectrum of demands based on future conservation goals that can be set. And before going on to the next slide, the observation here is that based on these projections, the annual projected demands and annual supplies appear adequate to 2035. Next, looking at the maximum day demand projections. Over the same period, again through 2038, this graph shows the maximum day demand projections compared to the available maximum day supply. There is a little bit more of a discrepancy, but because the annual supply is available, the gap can be bridged through operational and water management strategies, which we'll get into later in the recommendations. Again, the darker line is the projected maximum day demand. The lighter line is the projected demand with up to 30% conservation, and showing the spectrum of what that demand could look like between those guardrails. So the key takeaways from that section, based on the current and planned water supply strategies and demand projections, the City of Kyle has adequate annual water supply for the next 10 years. We recommend a plan for additional operational strategies to be in place by 2030 to manage projected maximum day demands to meet some of those gaps from the previous slide, which can be done without new water supply permits. And then plan for an additional water supply to be online by 2034. And next, we're going to get into the future water supply planning strategies. Before we do that, wanted to see if this was a time to pause and see if there's any questions on the current status of the water supply and demands. Yes.
The estimates on ARWA does that include, pardon me, do we have an estimate of the long-term capacity for ARWA built into these? I mean, not just how much we're contracted for,
Yes, yes.
but what the ARWA long-term capacity is. Is that built into your estimates?
Yes.
Just my question would be, with the aquifer, the Arwa aquifer, is that being managed with other cities also tapping into it as they're growing? Like everything that you're telling us that's gonna come on in the different phases. But do we have adequate, I guess, planning to not dry down that aquifer as with other cities also building at the same and growing with the same growth rates? So how are we tapping into that to make sure that we get the adequate supply needed?
Yeah, no, and I think to answer that, maybe,
And if this is a question that'll be answered later, that's fine.
no,
I'm
no,
willing to pause
that's a
it.
great question. I think I'll,
We're talking about Carrizo or Edwards here?
The Carrizo,
Carrizo.
I guess the major
so-
one that'll be our source coming
I
out?
wanna, turn that to James. Could you step up, please?
Graham's here.
Because
James
that's a
Beach.
question I get a lot is how do we avoid over stressing that and not allowing it to recharge? You know,
Right.
so as other cities are growing at the same rate that we are in this, central area.
Right, okay. I'm James Beach with Advanced Groundwater Solutions. I'm a subcontractor to STV. So the Carrizo has a very sufficient amount of water available for the permits that are in place and for the growth that you're talking about from all of the entities. There will be a continued discussion about permits in the future and water level declines, because when you pump aquifers, even a big high storage aquifer like the Carrizo, water levels will drop. And so that'll be a continuing conversation you'll see a lot of debate about. And there's a regulatory mechanism in place to balance all that out. And so the discussion is ongoing, but the physical water in the aquifer is there for all that growth.
Can you talk about that, more about that regulatory piece that's in place?
So the process is called joint groundwater planning, and the groundwater conservation districts that get together in GMA 13 to discuss how they're going to manage long-term the groundwater supply. They basically do that on a 5-year cycle, similar to regional water planning. And so all of the entities and the permit holders are a part of that discussion as stakeholders. And there's a requirement in Chapter 36 to balance maximum practicable production from the aquifers and conservation. And so the ongoing conversation that you see in the papers and with the districts is part of the process that's laid out in state law to find that balance. And so over time, that will be a continuing conversation, and all the stakeholders will be at the table to have that conversation. The physical water is there in the aquifer, and most of the conversation is about how much is too much over a long period of time.
I have a question. Are these numbers and charts and graphs and everything factoring in less rain on a yearly basis, so the increase in drought?
Ryan, I believe y'all's analysis occurred, for the Edwards aquifer, all of those cutbacks that are looking at the drought conditions are built in as maximum availability in those drought years, right? And so what you see consistently throughout the supply graphs is that's accounted for. Does that make sense, Ryan? Anything to add to that? That's great. Yeah. Does that answer the question?
You guys speaking to the mic.
Go ahead.
Well, and I think that the numbers, the graphs show that a firm and permitted supply, so a firm supply is available during the worst of the drought conditions. And then it also, the numbers also show a 20% in conservation efforts. So we would assume we would be under some sort of drought mitigation effort during that. So it shows both on our water supply and both coming from the customers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that the number, because our needs to conserve would increase if the drought worsens on a yearly basis. So are we factoring that, are we factoring in the fact that we will have to figure out ways to conserve more in these projections of what total supply will be through our water sources that are not like groundwater or rainwater?
Yes, sir. So the firm supply shows the absolute worst condition. So under all drought conditions, that is the least amount of water we would have available to us.
And Mayor, could I make a comment? The Edwards Aquifer we are showing on our graphs, we are going to use less and less percentage-wise out of the Edwards. The Edwards refills very quickly. It drains very quickly, and then it refills very quickly when we get rain. The Carrizo is not, like they said, is not as inclined to, it's not drought sensitive. It's a sand aquifer, but it refills very slowly. So the issue with the Carrizo is that fill rate, and are we going to need other well fields, which is a permitting issue. So it becomes very complex at that point. But the Carrizo is much less drought sensitive than the Edwards, and we are using less percentage of the Edwards as we increase our Carrizo.
That's exactly right.
Absolutely right. That's, again,
But
Phil,
so I think maybe the more salient question that we're all kind of getting at is to what Councilmember Harris said. She's talking about the Carrizo refills slowly. And so if we're pumping more out of the Carrizo than it's refilling, then eventually, even though there's a huge supply there, but eventually it's gonna start to dry up. So it's not necessarily about drought conditions as much as it is about refill conditions in a slow refilling aquifer.
Well, and
so-
it's also about the permitting process.
Well, that's.
Because it is huge. But it's about the growth in the state of Texas. Because the Carrizo goes from southwest Texas, like the Big Bend area, all the way over to Louisiana. So it's a huge aquifer. San Antonio draws out of several sections of that. So there's lots and lots of water there. But as we bring more and more industry in that sucks up water, huge water use, especially some of the AI industry and crypto mining stuff uses tons of that. Some manufacturing that is coming to the state of Texas. This is not necessarily an issue for the city of Kyle, but it will be for the statewide water use. So that's where we're going to have to be addressing those larger issues, is at the state level and at the federal level.
I mean, that's exactly to the question I'm sort of trying to ask, which I felt like Councilmember Zuniga was trying to ask too, is like, who, you talked about there's regulatory bodies that are over the overall production and drawdowns of water at the Carrizo, but who are the ones, not just stakeholders, but who are the ones that are actually tasked with managing the overall supply of the Carrizo and then our portion of it? Because I think what we want is, number one, not to be overconfident in the supply so that we're making potential mistakes with our how much water we permit, but also number two, to make sure that we're not undercalculating our actual supply and missing economic development opportunities. So either side of those has potential bad outcomes for us.
Yeah.
The only solution is to make sure that we fully understand the long-term supply of the Carrizo and how likely it is that we are going to run out of water pumping on that. And so even if the answer is, well, we have, if the answer is we have plenty of supply now, how do we know, how can we be assured that that supply is going to be protected long-term and that your projections are accurate? Because, as has been mentioned, there's a lot of growth coming
Right.
to the entire region, and pretty much everyone is looking at the Carrizo.
Right.
I'm sure Graham will have more to say about this, but to your first question, specifically for the water supplies we're talking about here, Plum Creek Groundwater Conservation District and Gonzales County Groundwater Conservation District. And those are where the permits rest, and then they are part of GMA Groundwater Management Area 13, which stretches all the way down to South Texas and southwest, southwest end of Carrizo. Those districts together, through the joint groundwater planning process, decide what allowable drawdowns will be in the planning period out to 2070 and 2080. And so that's the stakeholder and regulator discussion that's going on constantly and every 5 year, in a 5-year cycle. And so the permitting is one thing. The desired future conditions, which is a term used in Chapter 36 of the State Water Code, basically, or the projections for allowable drawdown in the aquifer. And so how do you do best to maintain your supplies? You stay active in that discussion and in that stakeholder process to ensure that your water rights and your needs are met to the best of your ability. And that, like I say, that is an ongoing discussion, and it happens just like regional water planning. And Graham, I don't know if you have more to say about that later, but I'll leave it there unless there's other questions.
And then there's a state level above those conservation districts.
I'm sorry.
There's a state level that operates above the conservation districts.
Well, the Water Development Board certainly has some say in those things, yes.
Well, I think just to try to maybe make sure I'm drilling down to the points that are being asked. I mean, there are limited supplies in this aquifer. It's very vast, but we're looking very long-term out for the supplies. We believe those are all there for the parties that have been mentioned. But longer term than that, the state is going to have additional water supplies. And I think that's the larger conversations that's been having at the state of Texas about looking at how do we invest for the future for all of the growth and the industries and things that are coming. This will be one piece of a much larger supply discussion for the entire state. So there are limited supplies. There's nothing that's unlimited. But we do believe for all the parties that are there, long-term, that those supplies are there. But more will be needed in the decades to come to make sure Texas has the water supply. So hopefully that tries to answer the question.
Agree with that completely, and certainly all the river authorities and other entities are looking at ways to bring water from, lower in the basin up to the growth corridor, and GBRA has plans for that, and others also. So that's an ongoing conversation. I think it's a good way to put it. Thank you.
So before I go to the next slide, one of the things I wanted to point out, we've got a 10-year projection right now, or a 10-year supply that's already in the pipeline, so to speak, projects you're under contract with that are under construction that are come online. A couple of things here in this discussion. One of them is 10 years sounds like a lot of time. In the world of water resources, it's not. I want to make sure we're on the same page with that. As you go through this process, many of these new water resources that have been created or conceptualized, it's easily taken a decade to go from the idea to where water's actually flowing. So this gives you that window to plan for the next phase and to implement those new projects moving forward to secure water for the city. The other thing, and again, I really appreciate the conversation, it is the worst case scenario, which sounds bad, but that's what the way water resource planning is designed. We can't make recommendations to you on hope that it's going to rain or plans. We have to plan for that worst case scenario. Everything that Ryan showed was the maximum reductions. Again, that's the worst case scenario in what your supply would be. And again, very critical to understand the interface between these. There's a translation between acre feet and MGD, and it's not just a conversion factor. It's managed annually, but you operate on a daily basis. Your customers don't care that annually you got enough water. They want to know that today they go to the sink and they turn the water on and the water comes out and they have enough water for their uses, okay? So, one of the things that James mentioned was the modeling that is out, 50 and 60-year modeling to make sure, again, that the aquifer can provide that water. Again, ultimately, we'd recommend that you look at a 50-year horizon yourself and have in mind, what are you going to do 50 years down the road? What's the ultimate build out? How big is the city going to be? And be thinking today about how you're going to meet those needs moving forward. So a few additional planning strategies we wanted to talk about on top of what have already been outlined. One of them is aquifer storage and recovery. And there's been a lot of conversation about this. The SAW system right down the road went into service in the early 2000s. So it's been about 20 years in operations now. I was the director of production at the time, so that was under my purview to start that up and operate that, as well as the recycled water system. The basic concept is that you use an aquifer that you wouldn't normally be using for your production. It may be water that would normally need to be treated. You use that area, if you will, as a reservoir. You inject water, excess water. Right now, you know, there's not a lot of excess water, but it's going to rain. Some years you're going to have additional water left over because you're planning for worst case scenario. You take that extra water, store it in the aquifer, and then you extract it. The idea, as you can see, the light blue there, the stored water, the buffer zone is the transition in water quality, essentially from the water that you put into the native water in the aquifer. So again, ideally, you withdraw the water from that stored water zone. It looks just like what you put in, and you take it out and you drink it. You don't need to pay for any additional treatment costs, okay? This does take a while to develop this. It does take a while to get water into the ground, okay? There's a lot of folks that are looking at this. New Braunfels, obviously, you mentioned SAWS. Austin's looked at it. And I believe the Barton Springs EACD is also looking at this. So it's a well-established concept, if you will. We're proposing to take a closer look at that, to begin looking at some exploratory wells, doing some more detail investigation to understand how large this could be and how feasible this could be moving forward.
I had a quick question, sir. Yeah, I'm not a technical expert on this, but isn't there a policy where if you pump a gallon of water, you have to replace that same gallon? Isn't that part of the water regulation, so you can't just pump?
Right.
And then there's
an
an expensive cost to pumping, just so that we're aware.
So you have to own the water to be able to inject it in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So that becomes your water. You know, the SAWS permit, the one I'm most familiar with, is basically 1 for 1. So you put in a gallon, you can pump out a gallon, regardless of the water quality, okay? If you take more than that, you have to have your own permit to be able to extract that from the aquifer. So yes, you can't pump what you don't own and what you stored there.
So what you don't own, you're not allowed to grab.
Right. Okay. Now, again, if you want to pursue the same aquifer and pursue permits in that, certainly that can be part of your water plan.
Gotcha.
I just want to make sure it's clear what we're discussing is, if you look on a total annual basis for water, we have sufficient water to meet the demand. It's the timing of when we need the water. So those summer months, when we have those max daily demands, those are the moments where we need additional supplies. And so it would be existing water that we have, treated water that would be going into the aquifer, and then we'd be pulling it out. And I think to Councilmember Zuniga's point, you couldn't take out more than you've put in, obviously. But it would be water that we already own, just trying to manage the timing of when we get that water out based on the needs that we have. So hopefully that makes sense. It's a little bit of a new concept for us to be thinking about. I just want to make sure that was clear.
Yeah, it's just like when we start, I guess if we're getting into the planning for more wells, I would just want to keep in mind that this is infrastructure, and then we have to manage affordability as well. So we're adding more and more wells. There's a large cost to, building those wells, and then that's why I thought about, well, there's a cost to what you pump, you have to return.
Right.
So I was trying to get that conversation in my mind when you're talking about the wells.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
A couple of comments on it. It is a water management tool. It's not necessarily it's not a water source exactly. It allows you to manage it not only over a year, but over potentially decades. So, you're in a, I guess maybe an average year, all these water resources potentially could go unused. You get to the end of the year and you didn't use all your water. This allows you to take that water that you own and do something with it and take advantage of it and put it down into the ground for the future. Again, you could use it potentially for meeting peaks. You could, that big gray, that piece of pie, the reductions that Ryan was showing, is a pretty big piece of pie. So basically, it lets you take some of this water you stored from other years and fill in the pie, if you will, and to supplement your water system. So it's really a great strategy. In terms of cost, the thing is, understand that a lot of these water resources, and you see, some of these maps where you have hundreds of miles of pipeline and all this transmission costs, the water's already here in town, okay? You don't have to import this water. It's here already in your system. You're just injecting it into the ground, potentially, depending on the aquifer, that's part of what the study will show. You just use system pressure just to run it into the ground, so there's no additional cost. And then you pump it out, but again, you're not having to extract it from 100 miles away and pump it and treat it. You're extracting it from right here underneath your feet, pumping that back out. That is fairly affordable compared to a lot of the other options that you're looking at. So yeah, there are definitely costs with it, but since you already own it, again, it's got great potential to expand and give you a lot of flexibility in your water resource portfolio. Okay. This is one of the projects, again, like I just described. If you look at the map on the right-hand side, there's a lot of pipe, a lot of transmission costs, treatment costs to get the water. GBRA Water Secure, that you're already talking to them about securing future water. That's going to be available a little bit down the road, not immediately. Again, it's just another way to diversify your water portfolio and then, again, make sure that you meet your future water demands. You understand that you've completed a water reuse initial plan, looking at using your treated wastewater effluent. But at least at this time, you don't have a lot of users for that. Typical users, irrigation, golf course, maybe large cooling towers, potentially dual plumbed office buildings, that type of thing. But right now, there's not too much of that here, so there's not a lot of demand. Doesn't make sense to build necessarily a huge distribution system for that because there's not users for it. Those systems really require an anchor tenant to use the water at the end and develop the line, and then you can work to connect other folks to it. This concept is taking that water, your treated wastewater effluent. I want to make sure, understand that water is again, highly treated. It starts out as wastewater, but it ends up being a very high quality water product. It's discharged to the environment and it goes down the stream, and you lose the rights to that after you discharge it. This direct potable reuse, indirect potable reuse concept would take that water, again, starting as a very high quality water, provide additional treatment through that, typically microfiltration and RO, and additional disinfection, and then uses that water as your drinking water source. Okay. Ideally, there's a buffer, there's a lake or something, or a bit large reservoir that it's pumped into. Obviously, the water quality is of utmost importance, but it is a concept that's in place already in Texas. It's a concept that many utilities are looking at, again, because of the value of that water, the high quality of that water that's discharging, the water that you own already. Again, that water's here in town. You don't have to go 100 miles away to go get that water and bring it to town. So we'd suggest a feasibility study to better understand what that would look like, how large it would be, how it would be piped and operate within your existing water system.
What's the cleanliness of the reused water versus clean water? Like, what is the gap in terms of like how clean can we actually get that reused water?
You mean coming out of the wastewater treatment plant? But obviously it's treated to a different standard. It's treated to biological standards, you know, has DO requirement to be discharged. It's not treated to drinking water standards coming out of the wastewater plant. However, a lot of wastewater plants with tertiary treatment, and again, this is going to be a class 1 water, Ryan, with the new treatment plant. That's the highest class of recycled water. It potentially could meet drinking water standards, even though it's not designed for it. I mean, it's going to look like spring water coming out. It is still going to require some additional treatment for, again, for biological safety, because there is some biological content in the wastewater, even as great as we.
So after it does get treated for biological safety, as you called it, how close to regular clean drinking water can it get? If,
Coming right out of the wastewater plant, again, is.
no, after it's treated and everything.
Oh, no, after it's treated, it is drinking water quality. It is.
Okay. And we will have that capability with the new wastewater treatment plant? Well, I just want to make sure we're clear here.
No,
So
yeah.
we're talking about taking it to Class 1 standard for the new expansion for the wastewater treatment plant. That still has to be treated again before you can drink the water, but that would be drinkable at that point. That's what these systems are designed to do. If you think about how water works too, this happens all the time, although we may not really call it this. Water is discharged into streams or other waterways and then extracted out at a later time and treated and sent out for drinking water purposes. That happens every day, in lots of parts of the state. So that's really what we're talking about. But I think I want to make sure I understand your question. Coming out of the wastewater treatment plant, it is not drinkable. It will be a very high standard of water. It would have to be treated again, though.
Yes, yeah, thank you.
And that's 2036 on here? Right. Those are the sources that we would want to look at and figure out how to do that. Correct. And we'll show you how that layers in with all the other supply contracts that we have. Okay. Thank you.
So just a side-by-side comparison of the project in terms of capacity and cost. Again, we want to work to refine some of the costs as you negotiate with others. Kind of a classic water resources approach is you work from your least expensive to your most expensive, to be good stewards with your customers' funds. Availability of these also comes into play, again, with executing, permitting, timeframe, that kind of thing. Indirect potable reuse, again, shown at 2036. Again, it does take a fair amount of time to pilot that. There's some public concerns about it, obviously, that would need to be addressed, and very, very high level of treatment, and that's going to take a little while to implement that. So looking at layering in those additional sources on top of what Ryan's already presented is shown here. One of the things that, as we talked about, we have a different set of data for the projections up through about 2038. When you get further and further out, it becomes a little bit uncertain what to plan for. Again, we'll continue to work with you to understand what that planning, what the planning horizon is and what the water is. We don't want to be caught short-handed with your water supply. So again, these are just an example of how those resources can fit into your overall portfolio and meet your demands. The first graph was an annual basis. This is, again, we've got two conditions we need to meet. This is the maximum day demand. And on this one, we've added the aquifer storage and recovery. Again, the ability to come in the future and use that facility to meet your short-term demand from that stored water that you have in the system.
So when I look at that potable section, it does look like there's a very large cost initial investment, but it does have a very sustainable return in reusing the water you already own, not dumping it back. It's already close, and recycling and continuing it.
Right.
So that'd be something I would just like to make clear that, there's a very good sustainable reason to look at that. And I like that that's a very large chunk that for an indefinite period of time is going to continue to give us back that drinking water.
That is one of the great things about it, is your population grows, they use more water, but they produce more wastewater. The wastewater increases as your potential for water supply. So, yes, thank you. Then, again, just wrapping up, all the things that we talked about already. Again, I think the overarching theme here is just the continued diligence in looking for opportunities for water for the city. And one of the things, as I've been involved in the water business for a very long time, is to again, maintain that openness. If somebody walks through the door with some, I don't know, water resources that they want to sell you, you have an opportunity. Again, I'd really encourage you to take advantage. You got the Green Valley opportunity that's working there. Water now is the new gold, okay? Extremely important. I wouldn't dismiss anything moving forward. Even with recycled water, if you have somebody comes in and they want 1 MGD of cooling water, you got a source of water there. Take a look at what it takes to connect them, even though that's maybe not in your plan right now. So thank you very much. Gil?
Thanks, Phil. We'll look at water infrastructure improvements now. I'm Gil Barnett. I've developed a model and did some evaluations of the distribution system and capacity, and that's what we'll talk about in this section. So we've covered so far water supply and water demand and how that grows over time. The next question is, what can your system deliver to customers? So we're looking at the existing distribution system, what's its capacity, and what needs to be done to it in the future to meet those future demands and handle that future supply. So we started with updating the water model for the city. That was completed in October of 2024, and that was to get the model to match the existing system as it is today. So we looked at 3 years of billing data and water usage to come up with current demands. We built a model, verified everything, and they did a calibration exercise, and we used the July and August conditions, which would be your highest demand months, to do the calibration. You typically want to look at stuff at worst case, highest volume usage, and so that's what we did with July and August. So this is just a quick view of what the calibration looked like. All those yellow dots on the map are points where we put data readers out in the field, and we measured pressure data. So we have all the SCADA data available every day that shows what your level of the tanks, what pumps are pumping, and things like that. So we also looked at the pressure data across the whole system. The colors there just show you the pressure planes. So the blue is pressure plane 1, that's your largest pressure plane. And red is 2, and the purple is pressure plane 3, which is the smallest. So we did each one of those pressure planes independently, did the calibration for each one of those independently. And what you want to do is just run the conditions that are measured for a given day, a given time, and then see if the model agrees with what you read in the field at all those data points. And then you adjust the model accordingly to get it to line up and match. And the goal is to get your model within 5% of what you see in the field, and we achieved that or better across the whole system. So the model is very accurately calibrated.
Quick question.
Mm-hmm.
You might explain what a pressure plane is and
Okay.
why it's important to these models.
Yeah. Well, out in the system, you'll see elevated storage tanks across the city, and those are at a certain height. And they need to be a certain height above the ground to give you pressure. As the ground goes up, the tanks need to be higher to give you that pressure. So a pressure plane just defines an area that's kind of similar elevation and has one set level for elevated storage tanks, and it gives a certain pressure across the whole system. Even within that pressure plane, your pressures can vary. As you go up a hill, your pressures go down. As you go down the hill, you're going to see your pressures go up. So if you live at the top of the hill, you're going to have lower pressure than your neighbor at the bottom of the hill. But you're going to be relatively close within a given pressure plane. So all these pressure planes are isolated from one another. They have different pumps, different elevated storage tanks, and they operate independently. So the way this works is your lowest elevations are on the east side of town, and as you go to the west, your elevations generally go up. So the second pressure plane, the red one, is higher. The elevations are higher, so your elevated storage tanks are higher. And when you get to the purple, again, it's another step higher. So does that Clear enough? Okay. So what we do after we develop the existing model to match the system, we just kind of evaluate the system. That's the first thing we did. We looked at the pipe diameters across the system. Are they adequate? Are there any that are too small? And you look at the velocity in the pipes to determine that. We looked at the typical system pressures, you know, all across the system. Are they within the typical range? Your minimum pressure by statute is 35 PSI. If you get below that, you're kind of in violation of TCEQ regulations. So you want to be above 35 PSI. And typically on the high end, you know, at my house, where I live, I got 100 PSI in my house, which is kind of high. So I've seen as high as 100, 110. But typically you're going to be in the 60, 70, 80 PSI range for a typical system. But lowest would be 35 PSI. So after we look at system pressures, we look at fire flow available. So we run some scenarios in the model to see what the fire flow available at different hydrants are. And you typically want to shoot for like 1,500 gallons per minute as a base. And higher is better, lower would be a problem. And we just kind of evaluate how the fire flow looks across the city. And if there are shortages, if there's things that are lower, you can look at things to improve the system to increase that fire flow. Another thing is water age. Water age impacts your water quality. And you take all the water pretty much currently on the in pressure plane 1 on the east side of the system, and you progressively pump it to the west. And so as you go to the west, your water age gets older, and you have potential for water quality issues. So we use the model to see how long it takes the water to get from the west side to the east side and vice versa, and just kind of evaluate the water age and look if there's any potential improvements needed for that. This is a view of the model with the pipes color-coded by diameter. And the reason I show this is just kind of see the larger the diameter of the pipe, of course, the more water you're going to be able to move into a certain area. The red pipes are the 12-inch pipes, which is your typical larger diameter pipe. You can see a lot of red pipes all the way from north to south. That cyan color, that lighter cyan color, is 16-inch. That's your larger pipes, and there's not a lot of that. You can see some up in the north, a little bit down in the south, but not a lot in the middle. So this is kind of how your system has developed over time as you've grown the city in the past, decade. That gives you an idea where the pressure planes, where the pipe diameters are. One thing that we found from operating the model in existing conditions is if you just increase your demand a little bit from where it is today, there is a potential problem in pressure plane 1 between the elevated storage tank in the north and the elevated storage tank in the south. They should stay together as they rise and fall, but the one in the north is kind of isolated. And in the potential, you could have the potential to have a problem maintaining pressure in the north while the south is good. And the reason is there's no large diameter pipe if you look from north to south on the east side of the city, there is no large diameter pipe connecting north and south. So that they kind of get a little bit of isolation between those two areas. And you don't have a problem with that today, but you would pretty soon as you start to grow. Within a year or two, that would become a problem. And so there are some projects that are already in place, already in motion, to improve some pipe diameters to improve that situation. Looking at system pressures, we looked at worst case. So this is like the max day and also the peak hour. So within any given day, you're going to have certain hours where everybody, in the evening, cooking, taking showers, that kind of stuff, you get the peak. And it's quite a bit more than that max day amount. So that's a worst case scenario. So what this map shows is I would point out the red areas. Those are the places that in worst case condition you could have pressures that would go below 35 PSI, which I mentioned was the minimum. So in a worst case scenario, and it's kind of in the downtown area, almost where we are in this building. There is an area here which is typically your lower pressures for the whole city anyway, but if you got into a worst case scenario with peak hour demands, those pressures could go below 35 PSI. So that's an area that was identified that could be corrected by changing the pressure plane boundaries. That red area currently is in pressure plane 1, but if you converted it and put it in pressure plane 2, it's going to have higher pressure, and you would lose that low pressure situation. So So that's another project it's in the TM, it's in the master plan, it was kind of spelled out and recommended for the future improvement. So after we got the existing conditions looked at and evaluated, the next step was to look at the future. So we've already got the future demands mapped out as you've seen earlier. So we put those into the model. So we created a 2028 scenario and a 2038 scenario, and then an ultimate scenario that had all those growth projections in there in the demand improvements. We primarily focused on max day demand and peak hour demand. The average day is, we showed all the graphs on that, but that's not really controls the system. The system capacity needs to be set so that you can handle a maximum day and also that peak hour within that maximum day. So this shows the overall CCN. So the outer boundary of this is the CCN again. The colored areas are the identified developments that had very specific growth planning for the next 5 and 15 years, all the way up to 2038. So those are the areas that are going to grow, and they're not currently in the model. So those need to be added to the model and then experimented with to see how that growth needs to be handled. So this just shows what the model looks like in the next stage. So by 2028, all the red piping would be new areas that the distribution system is expanded to, which are not there today. And then the demands go in there, we run it, and you kind of see how things operate and what kind of capacity issues there are in the system. So if you go one step further, this shows out by 2038, all the red areas, the additional areas that are put in between 2028 and 2038, which really grow a lot to the west. So these areas would grow a lot in that last 15-year time period. So that's the third model. And then finally, this shows the CCN overall. All those colored areas in the middle are all the land use areas that Ryan had mentioned earlier in the presentation, that we just assigned water usage by land use, whether it's industrial or rural estate or traditional neighborhood. And we put LUEs and demands in the model based on it. And you can see this is all kind of like infilling. It's not really going out anymore like all the other development was. It's more like backfilling inside the city where you've already got piping. So not a lot of new piping needed for this. You just got to make sure your capacity for pumps and elevated storage tanks are adequate. But you can see the total, there's 15,000 LUEs that are going to be added during that time period. And that's almost what the city is today. I think you're a little bit more than 15. You're like maybe 18,000 LUEs. But that's almost, just in that time period, the city as it exists today is going to be put in again in those colored areas. So what has to happen to the system to make all that work? As we added those expansion areas, moved the distribution system out to cover all the new areas, what are the main system improvements that are needed to make sure the capacity is there so that as the growth in population and growth in water demand increases, your system can keep up with it? And we identified overall 16 projects for capital improvement plans that are shown in this table here. The first 12 would be needed in the first 5-year time period, and then 4 more in the 15-year time period. And then by the time we get to the build out, it's not quite as perfectly defined. May not be a whole lot more piping projects, but there will be expansions, final expansions of pump stations and elevated storage tanks and ground storage tanks, that kind of thing. So what I'll do in the next few slides is I'll kind of take you through these projects so you kind of see what they look like. So in the first 5-year time frame, there's 12. 3 of those are already in construction, so this is already ongoing. There's a Waterstone pump station, elevated storage tank, and then a Hoover elevated storage tank. The design's already been done on those, and they're in construction, and they'll be done in the next year or so. And then the next 3 after that are already planned for and going into design, and they'll be ready, by 2028. So out of these 12, the first 6 are already known, already started, and in some phase of moving forward. That leaves 6 more capital improvement projects that need to be done before the end of the 5-year period to make sure capacity of the system can handle all the demand. And those include mainly pipeline extensions, a new pump station. Number 12 is a new pump station to receive all that additional Alliance water that were shown previously. And that'll be kind of in the southern part of the system. And that'll become a really important pump station as that future growth goes out to the west. This is kind of show you on the map where the first 8 are. They're just kind of numbered. So you've got the pump station and elevated storage tank for Waterstone down in the south. And then way up in the north, you've got the Hoover elevated storage tank. And then number 4 is, number 8 and number 4 are really a result. They're already in progress as far as starting the design, or at least number 4 is. And those were brought in because of that problem with the elevated storage tanks in the near future where they won't be able to stay synchronized, and you'll have kind of a bottleneck between the north and the south of that pressure plane. So number 4 really solves that issue. And you'll see it's out on the edge of the CCN. Originally, the first thought was just go through the existing piping, and there's a 12-inch that goes through neighborhoods and whatnot from north to south, and we just thought we would just expand that. But then we got into all the construction inconveniences and stuff to the city. So we found a better alternative to tearing up roads and putting in a new pipeline to replace an old pipeline. Is we just went out on the edge of the CCN boundary and took a pipeline up from north to south, and that solves the problem with water flow between north and south. And then number 6 up there is a pump station that's already in design. That's the Lehman Pump Station. It's being redesigned and expanded. And number 5, kind of north of that, is getting some pipelines up between that pump station to where the Dacey Lane elevated storage tank is to complete kind of that flow of water from the pump station to the elevated storage tank. And I'll just go on to the next, number 9. The CIP project is that pressure plane modification I mentioned earlier. We want to take the kind of the downtown area that has some of the lowest pressures, and potentially, especially as water demands increase, that pressure is going to become more of an issue. We'll take that and move it into pressure plane 2. In order to do that, there's some additional piping that needs to be done, which is shown on the right. All the red lines are additional piping that would be put in place to create that new pressure plane boundary and move that part of town from pressure plane 1 to pressure plane 2. The final for the 5-year time period, number 10, 11, 12. Number 10 up north is just the Lehman Road extension that's just kind of completing a loop from piping that was put in previously. And number 11 and 12 are the pump station to receive that Alliance water and the pipe connecting it up to the southern part of pressure plane 2. That yellow orange line, number 12, that's actually the feed line that comes off of the Alliance pipeline supply line, getting the water from the Alliance pipeline to the pump station. And that exact location of the pump station is variable. There was a lot identified where it's shown on the map that may not be the final place that's chosen, but it'll be somewhere. If you drew a small circle in that area, it'll be somewhere in that area. And that's really, that doesn't matter as far as the modeling goes. The piping might be a little bit longer, a little bit shorter, but the results would be the same. So those are the CIP projects for that first 5-year time period. Beyond that, of course, growth continues. And to get to the 2038 timeframe, there's 4 more projects that would need to be done. And this doesn't include all of the distribution piping that has to be put into neighborhoods as they're developed. This doesn't cover that. This covers like the main projects that'll feed water to those areas. So number 13 is the Nance Tract, which is an area out on the far west. It's a large tract. There'll be a transmission line, 24-inch line going from that Alliance, that R with 3 pump station, going out to the west quite some distance. And it'll feed kind of the whole area out there. At the end of it, there'll be an elevated storage tank, which we're calling the Nance Tract elevated storage tank. Old Stagecoach Road, which currently has a 12-inch line from north to south. That's insufficient for future growth, and that will have to be improved to a 16-inch line. That one might be a little bit painful because you are going to have to cut some roads and make some inconvenience situations, but that does need to improve from a 12-inch to a 16-inch, for this time period. And then there's a part that I'll show you on the map that's out to the far west of the new areas where all of a sudden the elevations really go up. They jump up quite a bit. And as I talked about pressure planes previously, the pressure plane that's established out there is not going to be sufficient. We're going to have to raise the elevated storage tank out there and have a real small area that has we're going to call it a fourth pressure plane. That'll be out there on the western edge, and I'll show you a picture of that when we get to it. So for 13, 14, 15, that's the things going out to the Nance tract. 13 and 15. 13 is the pipeline, 15 would be elevated storage tank is. And that's a long run of 24-inch pipe, so that's a significant capital improvement project. And then over on the right is the red area, is the parts of Old Stagecoach Road that will have to be improved from a 12-inch to a 16-inch. When you get out to the far west, this shaded area, labeled number 16, is where the elevation just kind of goes up too high, and you're going to have a different level for your elevated storage tank out there and just a different pressure plane. Just in summary, this kind of shows the existing system with the larger diameter pipe shown. The yellow are all those projects pipeline-wise that we showed and how they fit in. And you can see what they do is the cyan color are 16-inch existing, and those yellows are 24 and 16-inch lines proposed. You can see how it completes the flow from north to south on both sides of the highway, so both sides of town. These new projects will get things linked from north to south so you can get sufficient water flow from one pump station to different areas. And that just kind of shows you an overview of where all those improvements were. And just to summarize all those, this is kind of similar table as before. In the 5-year time frame, we've got 31 developments that will have significant population growth, and there's 12 capital improvement projects that will need to be completed to make sure the system has the capacity to deliver that water. And the total estimated cost for all of those at this point is $137 million. And when you look at the master plan, there's detailed sheets in there that have detail about each one of those projects. You kind of see what each one is estimated to cost. When you get to the 15-year time frame, the last of those 36 planned developments are going to be completely built out to 100%, and you'll need these additional 4 capital improvement projects to make sure the capacity of the system is adequate. And the estimated cost on those is almost $62 million. And then beyond that, as we showed before, all the growth from that point is going to be back towards the interior of the city. And so we don't need a whole lot more pipelines and whatnot, but what we will need is to finish build out of the pump stations and their ground storage tanks. And we'll need an additional elevated storage tank. We haven't identified the location for that yet. That's kind of far out there in the future. That'll be looked at closer when we do updates to this. And at some point, the Plum Creek elevated storage tank, which is existing, that will need to be replaced either where it is or nearby a different location. But that'll be something that needs to be done as well. So that's it for the infrastructure part. Just wanted to kind of review what we talked about overall. A lot of bullets here, but the first are just about the feasibility study, the field testing for the aquifer storage recovery. Phil talked about. The direct potable reuse is mentioned there that we talked about. The GBRA Water Secure Program, and then coordination with the ARWA Phase 2 project for potential additional water supply. So that was all covered previously, and and then the conservation plan and drought contingency plan. What I talk more about is getting the capital improvement projects identified and get those into the 5-year CIP. Of course, we had $130 some odd million there for those capital improvement projects, and there's a potential, for looking at federal and state funding to help maybe fund some of those projects. And then this, we looked at something as today as best we can, looking at how it is today and what the projections are, but these demand projections need to be updated yearly or on some schedule, because what we thought was going to happen this year, next year something may have changed, and maybe the growth is a little bit different, it's in a little bit different area, or maybe the numbers is faster or it's slower or a different area. Those kind of things need to be considered. So this is not a static plan. This has to be kind of a dynamic plan that gets updated. And so we're proposing that every 3 to 5 years, this gets looked at again in detail and, kind of relook the future and make sure we've got the projections for growth accurate as we can. And then how does that impact the system or our CIPs on schedule, or do we need to change that schedule? Or do we need different CIPs? So I think that is it. Unless you had something else, Ryan, summarize. Just overall questions?
But a quick question. On the second to the last slide, you had that the Plum Creek storage will have to be replaced. That's the one by the Sonic, is that right, Mike? Yes. Why would that need to be replaced? Is it just age, or it needs to be bigger? What is the issue with that?
A little bit of both of those. The age become an issue, and it couldn't, if we increased it in size, we wouldn't have to build another one as soon somewhere else. And we've had some talks about Plum Creek. Is there something else that you had about Plum Creek that was an issue?
It's mainly the size of that elevated storage tank and where it lies in terms of demands. Going back to the peaking demands that we do see, there's a lot of demands in that immediate area going out towards the west. That area of the system also supplies pressure plane number 3 as well. And so that just, makes it more acute for the demands on that specific area of the system.
Okay, so it's just basically inadequate for the need right now.
Long-term, it'll be an issue in terms of the supply that we can store there to meet those peaking demands.
Thank you.
This may be more water information than you ever wanted to hear, perhaps in one presentation, but first of all, I want to thank the STV team, Ryan and Marissa and the whole team, done a great job for this. Tim and Mike have also spent a tremendous amount of time on looking at this over the past year and making sure that we have a plan moving forward that we can execute on. This is not a document that goes on the shelf and just sits there. This is an action-oriented plan that we're going to be using to bring specific projects back to the council over the next few months to get started on. We'd like for you to consider adopting the plan in April, unless there are specific questions that you have or changes that you want us to look at, more in-depth analysis that you'd like us to have before doing that. But that's kind of the idea, is that we'd bring this back to you on April 15th for adoption. And then following that, there'll be a series of action steps that we bring you back to get moving. So that's the presentation. We also have a very in-depth report, a draft of that report that's included in your backup materials. I know it's very complicated and there's a lot of details, but when you look at supply planning, all the infrastructure components, we wanted to be able to give you that in one presentation so you could go through it. So hopefully this has been helpful. But any questions that you have, I know STV and our team would be glad to answer those for you.
This was all related to the water infrastructure, pressure planes and storage tanks, right? You did not include wastewater lines being needed or upgraded?
No,
into
this
the
is
CIP?
nothing to do with wastewater. That'd be a whole different.
Is there going to be a different way to look at that?
Yes, we're already engaged with STV as well to do the wastewater master plan. And so we'll be coming back to you. I don't know what the time frame is on that, Mike. It's several months before that'll be ready, but we'll come back and have a wastewater master plan as well.
Much like the water master plan, it's about a 10-month process. And so we're getting ready to start that. And like many things that the city manager just said, and then in the upcoming weeks and months, we're going to be coming back to council to act on this, the issues and the things brought up in this water master plan. Many of the things that are in here, we've already started on, but be looking for something very quickly to come back to council on the aquifer storage recovery and indirect potable reuse. And we're going to start those preliminary assessments. And we'll be coming up with budgeted numbers on what that first phase of that's going to look like. So when 2030 rolls around, we're going to be ready for these alternate sources of water. We think it's very important We're going to continue to look at our water portfolio and try to grow that with cities or agencies like we did with Green Valley. And we're going to try to bring more of those forward to you in upcoming months. I think that's critically important. And then the sort of the next phase of this water master plan, and we're getting ready to initiate that, is our drought contingency plan and our water conservation plan. That's a 6-month effort that also STV obviously would be working on to bring that back to council. We're going to create a 365-day per year water conservation plan instead of just conserving water in times of drought. So we look forward to bringing that back to council. And then also we're going to be meeting with some financial groups to look at possible grant funding and low interest loans to help us pay for some of these high, you saw the price tags, pretty expensive projects. So we're going to be looking at ways that we can kind of soften that blow a little bit also.
Thank you, Mike. That was going to be my question. We look at sources of funding. I know it seems like there's more funding for road availability, but we sometimes forget that we need all the other components of the city to function, which are the infrastructure of the piping.
So yes, sir. And so the work that we're doing with STV is going to continue. We're going to use their connections in Austin with the Texas Water Development Board and find out if there's a good fit for us, the right tool for us to continue on to this, to address those issues.
Mike, one of my concerns from the slides is that it shows needing to replace piping along Old Stagecoach.
Mm-hmm.
Can that be done during the bond,
Right.
road bond work?
Yeah, we're working
It's
very
a whole
closely
different
with,
project.
Mike Trimble, obviously Amber, and the whole road bond team to make sure that we get out in front of those projects. We can either make it part of the project or we can get in front of their project, so we're not having to go back and dig up a brand new road to put pipe in.
was
So
my
yes,
question.
ma'am. So yeah, we're definitely working with
Thanks.
that. So thank you very much. Thank you for the STV team. That was awesome. There's a lot of work that went into this. I want to thank Tim and his team. I mean, this was a big project, and like Brian said, for about the last 12 months, we've been working on this project, and this has been a great working relationship. And we've asked a lot of them, especially when it comes to modeling and with Gil, because we have so much development. We said, well, since you're doing this model, can you help us with this new development? And so a lot of that has been incredibly helpful. So Gil and Ryan, we appreciate that.
It's been a great exercise for us to go through. We've had various plans in different areas, but never one master plan for the entire system. We believe this is the first master plan in Kyle's history to have all of these different components together. So it's a big moment for us, and we're excited to have it in front of you. And again, want to thank the team for all their work on it.
Appreciate it.
I do appreciate it.
Next item. All right, next item is receive a report, hold discussion, provide staff direction regarding the update of the Alliance Regional Water Authority projects. Mr. Graham Moore.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. I almost said good evening, so used to being here in the evening. So for the record, Graham Moore with Alliance Regional Water Authority. I'll go ahead and go through slides. I know there may be some additional questions. I may add on a little bit to the discussion we had a little bit ago about the Carrizo and some of that. I have basically two, though, primary updates to give to you today. That's on our Segment C construction and our water treatment plant. So just as a reminder, on our Segment C, where we started initially with this project, it was awarded to McKee Utility Contractors just shy of a year ago in April of 2024. Originally, when we were initially going out to bid, we had anticipated having the segment up to the Waterstone development completed by mid-January of 2025. As a result of some requests from the city about trying to expedite things further, we issued an addendum and revised that requested schedule to make sure that we finished lines 1, 3, and 4. And you see those on the map. That's the bulk of the line work you see there. Have that completed by February 28th of 2025. Unfortunately, we've hit a few delays in some of that work, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. But we are slightly behind that schedule, but we're making progress. Line 2 then will be completed by Halloween of this year. And we did upsize a portion of that line to get across I-35 based on the agreement we had last summer with the city of Kyle that will allow the future Phase 3 extension that was referenced in STV to get that water to the west. Will provide for that water to get already across I-35 and be able to have the city of Kyle to make that connection. So where we're at currently, the yellow highlight there is a line that's already installed, tested, and basically ready for use. It was a small 12-inch line to feed County Line Special Utility District. The red highlights throughout are where we have the line already in place for line 1 and line 4 at the very tippity top. You can see that we've already crossed the Waterstone development area, and so we had kind of met that interim milestone. The last area that we lack is really up at the North Point development at the far north end near the FM 1626 pump station. I am happy to report that as of last week, all tunnels are completed, and that goes really for our entire program. We are now out of the tunneling business for the first time in, I believe it's been 4 years. They are currently threading the pipe through that tunnel at North Point. So they are actively welding the pipe together, pushing it through the tunnel. It's about a 1,500 linear foot long tunnel, so it's a very lengthy tunnel in that area. In addition, for the entirety of the system here, interior inspections are underway to make sure that we don't have any deflections in the pipe, so that we don't have any low spots. They've got very tight criteria they've got to meet, and they've been meeting those so far. They've started filling the line for hydrostatic testing, and actually we've made a slight change. We initially were only going to fill up to SH21 from Maxwell. We've revised that and are now filling all the way up to FM 150 initially for testing, and so that testing will actively commence next week, and then they will continue filling further to the north. And we are on track for water to be available at the City of Kyle's FM 1626 pump station on May 5th.
Graham, I have a couple questions on that. So
Sure.
You said that the delay from February to May had to do with North Point easement acquisition?
That was a large part of it, yes, sir. So we had been working for a few years along with the city who was trying to get easements, and initially were told that was going to be done by donations, and we kept trying to work through that process and getting delays. Ultimately, we ended up making a financial offer to North Point Development, which they accepted, and so we closed on that. But we did suffer some delays going through that process with them.
Okay, but I don't think the city council ever got the opportunity to determine whether that was worth the multi-months delay because it was the critical path to delivery. So how did the decision get made to knowingly delay and continue to pursue various options for easement acquisition when obviously it was, this is the most critical project in city history, and the timeliness of it is of extreme importance. So why did that delay occur without us being able to make a decision as to whether or not that was appropriate?
Well, we were continuing to work with the acquisition team to try and get that acquired as quickly as possible. Our contact with North Point Development continued to assure us it was going to be done by donation, and he was working to get signatures, but it became clear that just was not happening, and that's when we pulled the trigger to make the financial offer to move that forward. At that point in time, we didn't feel that this portion of the project was going to be the critical path, the last remaining portion that had to be done. However, they also did encounter some harder soils in that area when they were doing the tunneling that slowed them down.
So when did the acquisition of the easement actually happen?
October 21st, I believe, of 2024 is when we closed on that easement.
So you would have known by then that there would be a delay from February to May?
We still thought there was an opportunity to make the February timeline. However, they started encountering harder soils, which caused some delays in their tunneling efforts.
Months of delays, apparently.
About 6 weeks of delays, in total. So certainly take your point and agree to your point that we could have been more proactive in moving that forward more quickly.
Basically, we haven't been told that it wasn't going to be February until just now. This is the first time we're being told at the end of March that and now it's going to be potentially May. So I think there's just concerns that something else is going to come up. And if this supply, which you just saw the presentation as to how critical Phase 1B water is to the city of Kyle, if we aren't able to get this on in May, that's literally the last minute that we could possibly get it on without having serious interruptions in service going into the summer months. So I'm wanting some assurances, and I think the council and the public all want assurances that this is going to actually be delivered as has been projected this time, and that we're not going to find out at the end of May that it's going to be August, that we're going to have more real-time updates as to where the status of this project is, because we're telling folks that it's going to be February, and then when they say in March, where is it, we don't have an answer for them.
Yes, sir. The city manager has requested weekly updates on both of these projects that I'm discussing today. And so we are providing those weekly updates to the staff to track anything that does occur.
So, but
we're down to, again, the tunnel was, in our view, the last critical aspect of this project that had significant risk in it and that would jeopardize the schedule. And with the completion of that tunnel last week, I think we have a much higher level of comfort that the May 5th deadline will be met.
Okay. Do you think it would be possible from those weekly updates to pass those on to the council? And then also, like with each update, an estimated completion date of what we've projected today and whether or not that estimated completion date is changing. So just every week we'll know if we're still on schedule or not. And that's really probably the only thing council's interested in, mainly, is the answer to that question every week until it's completed.
Right.
Yes, sir. We'll be glad to do that. We're highly focused on it, and it's one of the reasons that we requested those weekly updates, and we'll make sure we get those to you so you can see it.
Any other questions on that before I go into some of the photos? This is just a couple of the photos of the tunnel there along the North Point development. You can see the retaining wall along that edge, and then them starting to install the product pipeline inside that casing. That's a 54-inch casing with a 36-inch water line. On either side, the right and left, are the 36-inch water line, and then this line in the middle is how they connect the piping together. That happens to be a 42-inch line, a little bit different area of the system. And then finally, just some of the other piping work that's ongoing and some of the other pertinences that they've got to complete out and finish out in order for water to be received. So with that, unless there's other questions on segment C, I was going to go into the water treatment plant, give you some updates there. So we've had some challenges at our water treatment plant as well. This is just our overall site. Again, we start with raw water tanks on the high end. We flow through by gravity down through our chemical areas, filters into the clear well, and then pumps that push that water out. From a treatment perspective overall, the treatment plant is designed to remove both iron and manganese and then condition the water to blend nicely with all of our customers' existing systems. In addition, the EPA sets secondary standards for both iron and manganese that are present in potable water to prevent taste and odor issues. In addition to those standards, we had our own treatment goals that we set, again, to make the water more stable and non-corrosive so that it would blend well with all of the existing Edwards sources and Candy Lake sources that our customers have. All of the water that has left the treatment plant to date meets all of these standards and goals, and we're in full compliance with not only the EPA TCEQ standards, but also in our own goals with the water that is leaving the plant. However, we have been receiving much higher iron levels from wells than what was anticipated in the design. So what are some of these problems caused by the iron? For one, it reduces the filter run times before they have to be backwashed and cleaned. The initial design had those filter run times in the 24 to 30 hours before they had to be backwashed. However, based on the actual loading that we're getting in of iron, those actual run times are as low as 6 hours at the higher iron level timeframes. So the net effect of this is that we have less treated water coming out of the plant. So the design flow rate in total of the plant was 19.5 million gallons per day. They're currently operating at about 4.5 million gallons per day, but only on a reduced time frame. They're only operating right now at 12 hours operation. They can increase that time frame, and will increase that time frame as we get closer to the summer. So the increased backwashes also overwhelmed the solids handling and recycle water systems. They were not designed to take that additional the iron that comes off those filters during the backwash and take those solids out and return all of that water back to the head of the plant. So we've been working feverishly to determine a solution to this as we get through the summer months, recognizing the peak demands that are coming from all of our customers, not least of which is the city of Kyle, and trying to restore the full capacity of the plant as much as possible. And so what we've landed on is a Westech Rapisand ballasted flocculation units. We went through an extensive summary of looking at different technologies, trying to determine, frankly, what was available and could be mobilized and built on site in order to meet the summer timeframe, as well as what would obviously take care of the iron issues. So these are the units that we have selected. The plan is to treat and divert all of the flow, 19.5 MGD, through these temporary units. They have demonstrated that they can remove 80 to 90% of the heavy metals, including iron. And so we would put those units between where we add our chemicals and prior to our gravity sand filters to remove that iron, then return that water to the filter system and continue through the process. We have located 15 of those units. They were each 1,000 gallons per minute. On a rental basis, 12 of them are brand new, 3 have been only utilized in public water in the past and would be allocated to the site. And just to be clear, this interim solution would provide the full 1,934 acre feet per year of Phase 1B water available to Kyle. So it would restore the full capacity that Kyle had in the
So Graham, when did
1B.
you say this would come online?
So we, by June 30th is the contractual date that this will be online. We have incentives. In fact, I was going to touch on that in a minute. We have some incentives for the contractor to beat that performance by either mid-June or even greater incentives if they complete it by May 31st.
So this is another reason February was never an option, because it's always, so like let's assume that the pipeline is completed and we're connected and the water is on. Right now, how much is available to us because of the shortened capacity of due to iron issues?
It'd be about a third of Kyle's commitment, which is about half MGD.
All right, so it's a third. What we have right now, when this pipe is done, is a third of what we're supposed to get, and we're waiting on this iron issue to be resolved until we're actually going to get the full amount.
That's correct.
So when did you? Number one, how is it that that we were so far off on our iron estimations? And at what point did we become aware that we were going to be critically low on the ability to actually produce water from the headworks?
So it was in early November of last year is when we really determined that the iron issues were causing reduced capacity. We had some brand new plants starting up. They were working through some of the chemical additions to try and determine what the situation was. And they narrowed it down, the operations team narrowed it down that the iron levels influent to the plant were higher than what the design intent was of the plant.
So was it initially projected that it just there wouldn't be this much iron? How is it that we missed that projection so much?
Yeah, so the design engineer created the design basis report and evaluated the region for the amount of iron that would be anticipated as part of their design that had to be taken care of in the treatment process. In that effort, they determined that the design levels would be 1 milligram per liter of iron, when we've been seeing 6 to 7 times that when the actual blended iron production and blended wells come into the facility.
And you only just learned of that increase? You said in November?
When we started operations and determined that that was the real bottleneck. We had some testing of the wells that showed higher iron levels. We provided that to the design engineer. Based on their history and experience in the Carrizo, they said they still anticipated those iron levels to drop to 1 milligram per liter and would not be a long-term problem.
So did anyone warn you that we may have basically a pretty major design flaw that would just make production not what it should be?
We were not until we started operations and started again trying to track what the problem was and determine that it was the elevated iron levels. that have caused this.
Is there anything that we could have done to have prevented this, and/or once we recognize the potential for an issue, to have changed our path so that we could actually deliver the water on schedule?
So, I mean, the fix, there's an engineering fix and a construction fix, which is to add additional treatment, another step in the process. And that's what we're looking at for our long-term expansion so we don't have the same issue in the future. Had we identified that, 3 or 4 years ago, we would have built that into the design and paid for that effort in order to take care of that so that we would not have had this issue. So technically it can be resolved, but it was not anticipated and known at the time. And so therefore it just wasn't resolved.
Graham, I didn't, I don't think I heard an answer as to how the projection was 6 to 7 times off the initial assessment. And then to tack on to that, if you knew in November, why did we only find out about it last month in terms of the need
I've been
for
making reports to our board about this for months. And
the
so-
heightened levels of iron and
Yes, sir,
the
and
additional?
finding the solutions to resolve this issue. Yes, sir.
Okay, so going back to the original question, how is an assessment so far off
So-
with this much money at stake?
No, fair question. Again, the design engineer was responsible for preparing a design basis report. And we hired that engineer based on their experience, specifically in the Carrizo Aquifer, had done several plants and had lots of experience in the area. They did an evaluation of the wells in the area. We even had 2 test wells that showed higher iron levels than the 1 milligram per liter. When they submitted their design basis report, we had not only our staff, but we also had our program management team review that report and ask comments to the engineer saying, hey, these numbers look low. Why are you assuming such a low iron level as compared to the data you have? And the engineer responded, we will update when we get more data, and we're basically confident in our numbers. We then turned over, once we had our final wells drilled and the actual data available, we turned that data over to the design engineer, and they still responded back that they felt like their design was adequate and that they expected those iron levels to drop and it would accommodate.
And that assessment isn't accurate, correct?
That's not
It did
accurate.
not drop.
That's right. We have not seen any dropping in the iron levels. We are continuing to try a few options of pumping continuously to see if we can measure a drop and see any significant change through time. We are, to date, have not seen that, but we are continuing to pursue that option. Now, I would say this is something that our board is keenly aware of and looking at all options to try and resolve both monetarily in addition to the technical aspects of making sure we treat all of the water.
Where does the accountability lie with a mistake that's going to cost millions upon millions upon millions of dollars?
Well, I believe it lies with the engineer. And
So is it safe to say that we're not going to be working with that engineer again?
it is safe to say that. Our expansion is not being done by the same engineer.
Thank you.
And that decision was made before we knew of this issue.
And Graham, has action been taken against the engineering firm?
I'm sorry, say again?
Has action been taken against the engineering firm to make this right?
We have not taken formal action at this point. We have reviewed it and anticipate that we will be taking formal action, but that has not been commenced at this point.
Thanks.
Graham, what research, I guess, did y'all do on y'all's own? Why wouldn't you ask for a second opinion if you kind of felt skeptical of the data you were getting and, anticipating that it was going to drop? I mean, there didn't really seem to be a good reason for that, I guess, because we know that water is going to, at a very deep aquifer, is going to have an anaerobic environment, so there's going to be a lot of that insoluble iron. So you're trying to get it to the soluble form. But why wouldn't you, I guess, ask for more technical or send out for more analysis, just so that you'd be very certain that we would be in a better situation?
Sure. We relied heavily on our program management team to help us provide that technical review. That's one of the assets they did, and that's why those questions were asked during the review of those early designs and preliminary basis report by the engineer to request, engineer, why do you think this is accurate? Why do you think this is going to happen? They had experience, although we have not been able to see anything demonstrated to us to show analytically that the numbers drop, that the wells in some areas of the Carrizo Aquifer do drop significantly in their iron demand through time, including the Saws plant has had opportunities where they had additional clarification put in because they anticipated higher iron levels that then did not end up occurring through time. And so they spend a fair amount of money on additional clarification that they don't need and different additional treatment units that they do not need. And so the engineer had that specific set of data based on his experience that he brought to the table.
So I guess just getting back to the mayor's point, even if we resolve it technically in the interim, we're still looking at lower capacity in the summer months here in Kyle.
So with this interim solution that we are implementing now, it would restore the full capacity of the plant. So
But
the
it's
full
not-
amount will be available to City of Kyle.
But the interim solution isn't guaranteed because we haven't tested it. We don't know for sure. We're taking, I guess, secondhand that it could work, but we don't know. I mean, it's a technical problem that can be solved, but it's not something we have set up yet. And you're talking about 15 separate units.
15 of the same units. We are working with the vendor to come out and to do some additional chemical analysis to make sure we're adding the right coagulants to make sure that we get the iron resolved to the 80 to 90% level. I mean, we are very confident that these units, we did a visit to units in Mobile, Alabama that are installed like this that reduce iron levels. We've seen the testing on that to show that they were able to reduce the iron levels by 90% at that facility. So we are confident that with the right chemical additions that we can, these units will reduce that iron level to the point where we need it to restore the full capacity of the plant.
Yeah, I'll let you go on, yeah. Thank you, Graham.
Sure.
Well, I'd like to keep asking a couple more questions. So, when did we do the ribbon cutting of the
December,
plant?
early December.
So, GBRA, who's a big partner, was not there at that ribbon cutting.
They were there.
They were there?
Yes, sir. They had attendees there.
They did?
Yes, sir.
The conversations I've had with them reflect that there were serious concerns about the ability of the plant to produce on time and on schedule, and yet the announcements were coming that there was going to be production on time and on schedule. Only around that time and shortly thereafter did I become aware that there was any issues whatsoever with regards to the production of water from these headworks and the delivery schedule. And that's after we had, gone out and made very public proclamation as to when this water was going to be available. And it only seems now that at the time that happened, that there was literally zero chance that we were going to be able to deliver the water on time and on schedule. And so here we are now, we're still trying to put in this final piece of piping to get the actual water turned on, but that's only going to deliver 1/3 the value. The interim solution is not here and won't be here until we're told June. But my experience is I don't know if that's actually going to happen or not. And then to Councilmember Zuniga's point, we don't yet know if that's going to solve the issue. So there's, as you can imagine, there's serious worry over the delivery of this project. And then also I, have concerns about whether or not we can trust what we're being told with regards to 100% available here in just a couple months. So can you speak to some of that and try to help assure us that regardless of whether when it was known or not, or the past, how can we take as certain the projections that are forward-looking, because they're going to hit right on the very edge, and honestly, it looks like they're going to hit beyond the edge of when our summer months start. And Canyon Lake is already extremely low. Canyon Lake is only, as we just learned, at a 15% reduction, but it can double the amount of reduction that it takes. And if that big chunk is reduced further, we could be in trouble. And so I'm really looking on to you to kind of help right the ship for us so that we can have some confidence moving forward, and not just it was a design engineer's fault and it was some experts who just told us, yeah, it's producing high iron, but it's going to come down and then that ended up like just trusting someone, and it, like we need assurance from you, in particular, that we're going to be able to deliver this water, at least on the schedule that you're giving us today.
Right, well, and that's why we've gone through this effort over the last 4+ months now. So when we had the ribbon cutting in early December, we'd learned that iron levels were high. We were still investigating, at the very start of investigating, really what the options were, trying to see if we could flush wells, trying to determine if those iron levels were changing through time, trying to get our hands around what the problem was. So I certainly didn't know the extent of the problem at the time in early December when we had that, to say there's no chance we were going to have our full capacity of the plant. We were still working through, at the early side of that, some of those issues. We have been working diligently with the operations team to identify the different options to deal with this. Again, we feel like this is the best, our best shot at both reducing the iron and getting something on the ground within the time frame that's needed to meet the summer demand peaks that are coming for the customers, especially the city of Kyle. I mean, trust me, your staff has made us very aware of the need for this, this full capacity as soon as possible. To that end, we have looked at, and we have our board authorized on March 13th, us moving forward with procuring equipment directly, the electrical gear, transfer switches, getting dewatering boxes, all the units we need to put in place to get this, this up and running as quickly as possible. We've also procured the contractor through a change order at a water treatment plant project to move this forward. And as I noted earlier, we've included incentives in that to get them to be completed earlier than the June 30th deadline date. So we're pushing as hard as we can on those fronts to make that happen. Part of the weekly updates I discussed with Segment C include the weekly updates on this water treatment plant project, including identifying if there's any foreseen delays coming as a result of that. We're relatively early. We're only about 2 weeks into that effort as the contractor mobilized to the site and began their work. They are hitting it with both feet, I can tell you that much, and we are intent on doing everything we can to make sure that they meet that deadline. And they are aware of the need for the city to have that water, and they are trying the best they can to make that happen, not least of which is because they have a financial incentive to do so.
Was that incentive, did that come from you? Who's the one who, how are we getting to these points of finally trying to get motivated to deliver?
Yeah, so the board made that direction to be able to offer the incentives. And I say that was led heavily by Mr. Langley, was probably the lead voice on pushing for that incentives to offer. I think it's fair to say not all of the board members felt like initially that was necessarily the way they'd want to go, but they came around to supporting that effort and all agreed that incentives were the best option to try and move this forward, understanding the need for many of the utilities to meet that, meet their summer demand by the use of this water, given the ongoing drought conditions in the region.
Well, I'll just speak frankly that, as I think about these new delayed projections for pipeline delivery and water delivery, to me, the responsible party for why we're being so delayed is the director of the Alliance Water Authority. That's just the way I see it, because we hold the city manager to the same accountability for issues within the organization. Ultimately, we hold ourselves accountable. And so we have to be the ones to assert ourselves at this point to make sure that this is delivered. And to me, this is make or break. And it should have already been make or break from previous deadlines. But this must be the last line of defense. We have to deliver this project. We have to fix the iron issues. And your June projections for when we're going to get 100%, we need to know what that date is specifically and have that be held. And we want to hold accountable to this, because I feel like that we've slipped past every deadline that we've ever had, and I've been here for almost 9 years now. And so we've got to get serious about this. And so I just want to let you know now that that's the way I see it. There's the next delayed news is going to be met with some kind of serious action, some kind of vocal frustration that's going to come out. And we don't want to see it, because the entire community depends on these deadlines being hit.
I certainly understand that. And just
Mayor Mitchell does not speak alone. I've been relatively quiet up to this point because my mama taught me if I didn't have anything nice to say, to not say anything at all. I hear frustrations from our citizens almost every day. And all I have seen is failure after failure after failure in the delivery of the water that was promised us. The tolerance for failure is vastly exceeded.
Understood. And again, the date that you requested is June 30th is the absolute contract date when we're trying to improve upon that. And I understand. I've got to, well, I don't know that, hit on one other topic here. The permanent clarification. So we are working on an expansion design now for the 1C, 1D that was mentioned earlier to make that available. Obviously, we've got to make sure that we've got a permanent solution in place for this clarification, not just this interim solution. So we are currently investigating, our design team is investigating those multiple options, working through the selection technology to determine what will work and focusing on both schedule and cost related to those things. And simultaneously looking at ways we can fast track that construction so that the interim clarification solution is required for as little time as possible. And we expect to have a better idea on that design and construction schedule in April. Our design engineers are working quickly on that and expect to have more information that we can present to both our technical committee and board in their April meetings. So I think that was the last salient point here. I'm happy to take any other questions that you may have.
Graham, I'm not even going to mention the cost yet, but I'm looking at another added cost to all of our water users. People are upset about their water rates already. So we're looking at an interim solution that is going to be costly, and then we're looking at having to upgrade the plant because we didn't anticipate that level of iron, which would be another cost to this ARWA, project.
Yes, sir.
So,
That's correct.
and I remember when you came back in sometime last year, and there was a delay that cost us another $8 million to do more piping that wasn't in there. So I echo like what council members are feeling is frustration. Like we've just been hearing what gets set back, a couple of excuses, not knowing about this easement with the tunnel. I think we should have known about that as council, but I also say staff should have told us too. So whoever you were in communication with, doesn't just fall here, but we need to get that communication sooner so that we know what exactly is the date, when these projects would be delivered. And I'm a new council member, but I've known that the ARWA thing has been worked on for 20 years.
Right.
So I think and now we need it. It's like, so there's very little room to miss it, right? Because it's needed. We're in the drought, and we're still growing. Nothing is stopping here. So that's where the real pressure is.
Yes, sir. Understood.
And of course, it's the cost part of something probably we could have built into the design. And now it's like, now we have to add retro, and at the same time, we lost this, and then this interim solution is kind of like just throwing money away, in my mind, because it's not going to be long-term. And now we're buying more water from Green Valley and other little utilities who have it. So it all starts to add up, in my view.
Sure.
Graham, can you walk us through the filtering process, how the interim solution works and how you plan to make that interim solution or evolve it into a permanent solution?
So there'll be two separate solutions. So the interim solution, which I'm sure it's hard to see on the screen, but is layout, we will downstream of our mixing basins where we add in our chemicals, but before it goes into our current gravity sand filters, we will pull the water off to the side, and then we will run them through these 15 ballasted flocculator units that will remove that iron, and then we will take the water that comes out of that and return it back almost to the same location and continue it down through the gravity sand filters. We are pulling off, there's some reject that comes off of those flocculators that we will dewater and try and keep that water in cycle as much as possible so that we're not just disposing of that water. And so that will then go back through the rest of the regular treatment process, which is the gravity sand filtration, and then we add chlorine, and it goes into our clear well, and then ultimately through the high service pump stations and out to the system. So it just pulls it off to the side stream and removes that additional iron level and then returns it back. In terms of a permanent solution, we're looking at, again, we have about 5 or 6 different technologies that are being reviewed. It will, in all likelihood, be some type of a standalone clarifier or a plate settler system. Again, in that same general location between where we add the chemicals and the rapid mix and the filtration to remove the additional iron that's required before it gets into the filters.
So given you don't, or we don't yet know what that permanent solution will entail, do we have the quantity of filters that we need in order to operate for, the time being?
Yes, so these 15 filters will allow us to treat the full flow of the 1B plant. The 19.5 MGD can all be diverted and sent to these filters, this interim solution, to remove that additional iron. So this will restore the full capacity of the plant. We have also set this in a location that will not be the permanent location for the additional clarification that's required, so that we can build that permanent clarification in place. And then once that is online, remove the interim solution.
And so that will take us from the 33% all the way up to 100% of our allotment of phase 1?
This interim solution will, yes.
And how many additional filters do we have if, God forbid, something were to happen to one of them?
So this has one additional unit. So there'd be, at peak flow, we'd have 14 active units, and then one would be a backup flow, so a backup unit. I think at this point, based on some discussions with some of the other partners in the system, including those that are contracted through GBRA, it is clear that they do not intend or need to use all of their flow in this next year to 2 years. And so I don't anticipate we would actually be at the full 19.5 MGD of flow. So in actuality, I think we would have 3 to 4 to 5 of those units available if we have, 1 down or 2 down for service. But in terms of if we were at peak flow for a number of days, 19.5 MGD, it would take 14 of those units, and we would have 15 on site. And we have operators on site doing preventative maintenance on that, checking sand levels and equipment maintenance, doing everything they can to see if there's any challenges coming that we need to be aware of, as well as spare parts on site to handle those issues. We also have a temporary generator we're going to bring in to back this up, so that if we have a power outage, we can run on temporary generators to provide this additional treatment as well.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Okay, the only other thing, if you'll allow me to address the Carrizo, there were some questions about the Carrizo Aquifer and regional planning and that effort, and I think James Beach did a very good job of kind of describing that. We participate actively every month with our 2 groundwater districts that manage the resource. They're the ones that, if they see that there's a problem coming with the desired future condition in the future, that would require some sort of change in our permitted amount of water. And so that's the Plum Creek Conservation District and the Gonzales County Underground Water Conservation District. So we attend or participate in those meetings on a monthly basis. They have long-term water level drawdown maps that we're able to look at and project out what those levels look like. So again, the nice thing about the Carrizo Aquifer, it is slow to react, either to draw down or to recharge. And so we can look many years into the future to see what's going to happen, as compared to the Edwards, which is very dependent on use, rainfall, and it can change very rapidly over time. The Carrizo does not operate like that. So we are actively monitoring that. It'll be, I think, as we started up our well field, GBRA has started up their well field. It'll take a little time for that aquifer to adjust to that amount of pumping, and for us to see, we know what the models anticipate, we know what our experts anticipate. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out over the next year to 2 years and see what those projections look like. But we fully participate in the state water plan, which the GMA, the groundwater management area that those groundwater districts get together and manage this resource, they have to take into account what is happening at the state water planning level. So we are participating at the right levels to monitor this and understand the issue. As we've told these landowners when we went down there to start permitting to start our leasing efforts back in 2008, 2009, it does us no good for this to be a 20-year supply and it to run out. We need this to be a 100-year supply or beyond. Our communities are relying on this for a lot longer period of time. So we're actively reviewing that information and managing it so that we can stay and have active resource available for all of our customers through the long duration. The last thing on kind of a water supply situation is at the legislature. Obviously, the legislature is in Austin right now. Senate Bill 7 is one that I would take note of if I were in your shoes. It's a significant effort by Senator Perry out of Lubbock, who is the chair on the Senate side for the Water Committee. It would create a one-time infusion of $3.5 billion into the Texas Water Fund and annual $1 billion funds into that, more like a transportation funding usually does, where it's an automatic renewal of $1 billion each year, with the intent of that going to very large-scale water projects to meet the needs in the growing areas. The Austin-San Antonio region, the Dallas-Fort Worth region, Houston, most of these regions are when they look out 50, 75 years, are in need of finding additional long-term resources to meet the needs. The state is just growing tremendously. There's a lot of effort. This week during the SB 7 testimony, the river authority that regulates the Toledo Bend Reservoir right on the border between us and Louisiana says he's got 600,000 acre feet of water for sale. The state is actively talking to some of the states to the east of us to look at buying water from the east and moving it in with a general intent of bringing it to the large population centers of the state, recognizing the need that's coming. So now, will it all happen and what time frame it happens? Those are seriously big, long-term projects, but there is, I think, for the first time, a really, truly significant effort at the legislature to make this happen. The governor's already stated that water is a priority, water funding is a priority, and the House on their side has a similar type bill to Senate Bill 7 to make this happen. So there is some movement up front at the legislature to try and put more funds into this and identify longer-term solutions to help the needs that are going to be really further beyond the scale you're looking at, probably more the 50 to 100 years to determine those water supplies that could come to the area. So just something I think for you to monitor, and if you have lobbyists up there certainly supporting Senate Bill 7, I think would be a wise situation for the city. So with that, I'll be happy to take any other questions. Great. Thank you.
Brian, you have anything else?
No, sir. We'll keep you up to date on where we are and make sure I provide those weekly updates to the council. And the plan is to get us up and running May 5th.
Well, I would say I do appreciate your efforts on the board to try to make sure this project is expedited and completed in a timely manner. It's becoming one of your trademarks, is trying to execute on project delivery and timelines. And so that effort is appreciated. And please, take our comments to heart as you represent us on the board.
Will do, and I also want to acknowledge Dr. Harris's contribution as well as Mike Murphy's who sit on the board with me as well, and we'll continue to be focused on it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mike and Laura Lee, do you have anything you want to add with regards to this conversation that we've had?
No, pardon me, no. I think that with the completion of this project, we are well on our way, when it is complete. I think Mike is right on. Or Graham is right on the time frame now. It's a big project. It's been a big project. And with something this massive, with this many cities involved and entities involved, it's going to have some delays. It's time to be done. It certainly is. But then we also have phase 2, new well field starting, that will add to our capacity in the future. Like Graham said, we're thinking far into the future, 100 years, not just 20 years. And that is absolutely crucial. But there are a lot of entities that control that. So we need to be careful to be doing our due diligence and our advocacy at the state level and the federal level to assure that the state has adequate water.
Tobias?
It's not just us.
I hear the mic rustling. Are you wanting to chime in here? No.
Mayor,
I'm trying to let Tobias speak. So we can't understand you. Tobias, I don't know if you can hear me or not, but we're not able to hear you. You're cutting out. I would suggest turning off your screen, but I think you're not allowed to do that when you're speaking. Or is it just for the vote? Either?
He needs to be on screen when he's participating, unfortunately.
it's bad communication.
You're muted now, but I see that your screen came back. So try again. Let's see.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Sorry, Tobes. I'm sorry, man. We can't hear you. It froze immediately as soon as you started talking. I think we're going to try to maybe adjust your resolution, see if that helps, but I doubt it's. Miguel, do you have something you want to add?
Yeah, Mayor, I just wanted to say, what do you think about if council requested a summary report that kind of detailed some of the delays that led to the project, not coming online, so that future councils have like some idea of like what they should expect. I don't think this situation would happen again, but so that where could some of the significant delays occur, so that they're more aware in how these projects come online and how they could be affected by certain things that they may not know of, but they get surprises. I think that would be a small summary report would be beneficial to the council in such a very expensive project that took place. I would say the same thing about the road bond. If the road bond doesn't come online and it goes 100 million over budget, that there should be a summary report on what were those impediments.
Well, it sounds like what you're really referring to more is like an investigation, essentially.
I don't want to go to that link, but I think that there should be a summary report for the council to be briefed and recorded.
Like a timeline of events, basically, and that lays out
A
the
summary
delays?
report, a summary report.
Okay. Well, I just want to drill down into what it means. I
But
support
if
the
the
notion.
mayor's
but-
interested in an investigative report, I'm not going to say no to that. I just wanted a report, something written up for council. And future councils can research that and learn from that when they take on a bigger project as well, that you must ask these questions earlier, council, because you're going to get these surprises as well. And you're on the hook for them because you served during those periods. So you should not be negligent of these big projects. That's why, me and Councilmember Rizzo always ask about those roads, and Tobias as well, because that's another big project.
One thing I could offer, perhaps if this would be helpful as a timeline of the project, I think would be maybe helpful for council to see that. And then key lessons learned that can be applied to future phases. And, we have these other two phases, large phases that are coming in 27 and 32, and they're critical. You saw that with our supply projections. We need those to come on. They have to hit those dates. So what are the lessons that we can learn from the prior experiences to project us forward to make sure that we don't repeat those in the future? A lot of these with the pipeline relate to right-of-way acquisition, lots of those kinds of things, but maybe there's some of those elements that we can look at and have a good discussion about that perhaps.
Yeah, I would maybe even broaden it to say, you know, because in reality, like the actual truth is this isn't a multi-month delay, it's a multi-year delay. So we've been, you know, because I've been here for all the years, and Arwa's been here, so I've had every single issue, you know, every single timeline missed. And it would be interesting to, you know, to go back and just like you say, I'm really more holding myself accountable to, you know, because I mentioned the state of water in every state of the city address. And there's, you know, I've stayed on the water issues, and yet I feel almost powerless to do anything about it. But each time it's because I think that it's about to be here. I think it's about to be here. So I think, okay, it's like I'll just give it a little more and a little more. And then, you know, it gets to a certain point where I just start wanting to I want answers, you know, and it's not personal, but that's just the way that it feels. I feel like it's my duty to ask the hard questions as to why it's taken so long. Because at no point did I ever was the board or the council ever asked permission to delay the project for some reason. The project just missed the deadline and missed the deadline again. And there's always answers for why of the delays, but never an opportunity for us to say, no, we want to ensure that it's delivered by taking this path. When those paths were there, they were there for us to take, I think, but we were at arm's length and kind of beholden to, we have to have this project, so what can we do? So there's never been a request brought to this board and this body for additional investments that we have denied. I mean, we've supported it in its 20-year history with 100% yes votes, and then just asking that it be delivered on schedule. So I'm not sure how helpful it would be. I think a lot of it has to do with the translation of the commitment from us all the way through to the director to make sure that and then accountability, holding ourselves accountable as well. As the association, you know, accountable, or the alliance accountable. So I don't know if a summary report will give you the information you seek. If it did, I certainly would want to see it. I would you know, but it could also just end up being, these are all the reasons why your project was delayed. And that's really not going to be that helpful, because what we really want to know is this is what we could have done to fix it and why it should have been delivered on time and on schedule. And that's a harsh degree of self-reflection, I think, that's required. And I just don't know if we get that. We could just, but I'm open to it.
Let us think about that a little bit, about what we can have that's beneficial I really think focusing on lessons learned, what's the right structure that we need at the board, communications with council, what we need from a staff perspective, what are those things that we need to do to ensure that we stay on track? I mean, those are things we can strategize a little bit about and perhaps bring you some recommendations of how to do that. Maybe that's helpful.
Let's just call it a postmortem on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I like lessons learned, but postmortem, I understand. And we'll look at it and see. Negative connotation. We'll figure out how to bring some things forward that make sense moving forward. Absolutely. Mayor, I don't know if Councilmember Tobias can be heard. He had some comments. If not, that maybe you or I could kind of just read into the record a little bit. Councilmember Tobias, can you hear us?
Immediately.
I think the comments that he relayed to me was. Yeah, essentially.
Basically ditto.
He had
Yeah.
the same kind of concerns about the project, 4 weeks to go to get water delivered, and that needs to be a focus, was the comment that he had relayed to me, that he wanted to just have for the council. Sorry, we're having technical difficulties getting him online.
All right.
Mayor, that's all we had for the RO
All right.
update. If you're ready to go on to the next item, or if you need a
Well,
break.
we can let these guys go. So take 5 minutes. All right, 5 minutes, and then we'll go 7 minutes. We'll come back at 11:40.
I'm here to introduce Kabi Caputo from Bickerstaff. I do want to remind you kind of where we are in this process. Mr. Caputo has provided us with Example Plan A, which is currently on this screen over here. Example Plan A is, in his opinion, legally sufficient to meet all of the requirements for a single-member district. And so if council chose to adopt that plan, we believe that that would be legally sufficient. If city council has specific changes that they want to request to that plan, that's what we're here for today. We have a member of the Bickerstaff staff in the back, Sherry, and she will be able to draw the lines kind of real time as we're going through this if you guys want to change the lines. What we're trying to do is get a final map today so that we can put this on for public hearing and adoption in April. With that, I'll introduce Mr. Caputo. Thank you.
Mayor, Council, thank you for having us, City Manager. Always good to be here on a Saturday. Hopefully this is a little less painful than some of the things you guys were just talking about. So as the city attorney said, we've got the Plan A up. We sent you big maps. I hope they were big enough. I don't think I can make them any bigger. We have them here in the room as well. Sherry McCall, our GIS technician, is here in the back, and she's got the software running. And if you want to engage in line drawing, we're more than happy to let her share her screen, and you can tell us what blocks you want moved around, and we'll start moving things around and see what it does to the plan. So it's really for y'all to tell us, give us some feedback.
Can we zoom in to the boundary between District 4 and District 2 on the west along Stagecoach?
Oh. I may have gone the wrong way. That is one. We can zoom in more once we have Sherry's map up, if that's what you want to get to.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand this little sliver here on the left.
That little bump?
Yep, I'm just trying to look at it a little more closely to make sure it, because the way, I can't tell which side is that sliver blue or is that sliver red?
Not showing up here.
The property that's there. Does it switch? Is that?
The bump should be a part of a road, but we can't.
You
we'd
see
have
the
to
red
zoom in
line
more.
there?
Yeah. No, I've noticed it before looking at the map. I just assumed the road made a jog there, but.
So the red line is the new boundary, and
Yeah.
then what's remaining, if we had a ability to point on this with the mouse. The red line is existing, and then the new area is shaded, that same color? Is that, Mayor, is that kind of addressing your question?
Yeah, but I can't tell whether those, that what's in that area. We have a council member who's not here, and so I'm, out of goodwill, I'm just
Oh, down
ensuring-
there, okay.
Yes,
Sorry.
you see, it
Oh,
looks like a double red line. I can't tell what district that section is in. Is it changing districts, or is it staying in District 2? Yes.
That little blue part there. That is the
No,
area.
left. It's old Stagecoach, the western part of the blue boundary, right there.
Oh, down
The
there.
line below, down there. Right there. What is that? Can we get zoomed in on that?
Hold on. Sherry? You're gonna have to pull the map up, I think.
Yeah, she's working on it right now.
Oh, sorry. Thought we were. I think that's as much as we can zoom here.
Okay. Well, if y'all have other discussions, if she's getting that pulled up, we can continue the dialogue on any other issues or items that you want.
Yeah, my speculation is it's a connection point.
Well, and
Yeah, that it's just a road.
I think,
And the property on either side is in the ETJ.
yeah, but our council member that represents that district lives right there.
Yeah.
We know where he lives. He's plotted on the map.
Okay, so is that the
And-
concern? That
and that's
the
not
Yeah, I'm
council
just
member
wanting
is
to
not
see it
district
for
out?
myself. I've been told that his district is not changing, but every time I see that map, it looks
Oh.
like it got looped into District 4, and I just want to see evidence that it didn't.
Come on.
And
Get the really big map.
We'll do this manually.
That's how we did it in the old days.
This one has his home plotted on it. His house is plotted right here.
It's on this map here.
So that is a District 4, this
Yeah,
piece.
that little road, his District 4.
It's just a road?
Yeah, his,
His house is here.
yeah, he's plotted.
Okay.
Amazing. Thank you, Amy.
All right, that was my question. I just wanted to see that. Not-
Yeah, no, he was safely in, I mean, he's right on the very, very edge.
Okay.
I think I said that at the very first
there it
meeting,
is.
that he lives on the very,
Yeah,
very
with
edge.
the council members. Okay. I would be curious what, I think we've got Tobias now. Can we hear you, Tobes? Nothing yet.
Was he muted?
You might be muted on your phone. Keep giving us the testing. Keep working on it.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so when I was looking at your numbers, you have, I guess, voting age population districts fairly balanced. I think District 4 might have been a little bigger in voting age population, but then you also went to registered voters. I think, didn't you do the numbers by that as well?
No. No, we do the numbers by total population and then by voting age population.
And then I think didn't you have a column where you did registered voters? And then you also subsectioned it into Spanish surname registered voters. I think you're trying to give us more data on the demographics of every district.
Well, yeah.
So, Michael, you want to go ahead? You're on speaker now.
Yes, okay, can you hear me? Thank you, everybody. I'm sorry if I'm not there, had surgery and all that. Anyhow, I had the same concerns, Mayor, when you were looking at that map for District 2 and District 4.
They showed us the map.
So I wanted to make sure that line is still supported by that district member.
Yeah, yes, and it is. They brought up a big map to prove it. So I'm comfortable now. I think.
Okay, that was one of the ones that I had concerns on. And then when we get to District 6, I'm okay. I'm comfortable with what we've got so far.
Okay. I will say as a point for discussion, well, actually, if y'all want to continue with Zuniga's, I just have some things for us to think about. I'm not actually suggesting any changes, but if we're still waiting.
Yeah, it looks like they're still trying to get her.
It's just more on a philosophical scale. The reason, when the districts were initially aligned the way that they are, and you have to look at the red line here, what you can see is that the District 6 actually goes into Western Kyle and connects some of the Silverado or Spring Branch. I can't ever remember which one that is. Spring Branch. Can you go back to that? Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. And the reason they did that when they created these districts, and the reason District 2 goes east, crosses I-35 as well, was actually intentional to try to avoid having an east-west narrative on the dais to force council members to campaign on both sides of I-35 and be elected from those bodies. That the thinking was that it would provide a more rounded council member. Regardless of where the council member lives, the district makeup itself would require both sides of I-35 to be represented. And I'm just curious what you think about that topic in general. The new boundaries, as I read them, kind of go away from that a little bit. So Tobias would lose Spring Branch, or this District 6, we should say, would lose Spring Branch. And I'm just curious if y'all think maybe we should try to maintain that, or if we're okay with just going with a more, District 6 is primarily east in terms of the residences, and if that's okay. or not?
Mayor, I've always thought that Spring Branch needed to be, all of Spring Branch needed to be part of District 4 because it cuts that neighborhood in half the way it is.
Okay.
And that just doesn't make any sense. So people don't know who's their rep.
That is very true.
Well, is the solution then to put all of Spring Branch in District 4, or could it be to put all of Spring Branch in District 6? That's sort of the question I'm trying to ask, and then maybe reconfigure in some other way that doesn't make District 6 so predominantly east.
It still is. I mean, even if you put that back into District 4, it still is predominantly east. I mean, it just is. I don't see any way to, unless we go like to the north.
Well, so where are
I don't know
the,
where we would draw the boundaries.
can you slide it up a little? So we can see more of the northern section?
Can you scroll north so they can see more of districts 2 and 4? There we go.
So yeah, well, that's 1, 2, and 3. So we're talking about 2, 4, and 6.
Yeah.
Okay, so 3 still has a significant area that is west of 35, that is a developing area. I think that will fill in and make those populations similar.
Well, it's mostly all commercial, though, that's in
There's
District 6.
apartments going in up there.
Yeah, but well, for example.
And the Caraway tract will be a lot of apartments too. So enough to balance the population.
In the Caraway tract on the east side of I-35?
Uh-huh. It is, but I mean, it balances that district, population-wise. But you know what? It makes sense. I think it makes sense this way. You're not cutting out half of a neighborhood.
It's just basically bifurcated on the rail line?
It is, exactly.
Would there be any interest in making the boundary 1626 instead? And that makes that such that the, Area 6 and Area 10 in Plum Creek, as well as the North Point developments and all of that industrial would be within the district of District 6. But also Area 6 is scheduled, slated to have a lot of economic development considerations in the future. And I'm just really trying to explore the question of if that's is something that we think strategically, long-term, makes sense to get more of District 6 into the Plum Creek, into those particular zones. I'm okay with it being a variety of ways.
Yeah.
I think it's worth having a discussion because you don't get a chance to
Yeah.
look at your boundaries too much.
Yeah, there's very little residential that's in District 4 that is above, that is north of 1626.
Right. But I
Almost
guess
nothing.
what I'm saying is it incentivizes District 6 to recognize the Plum Creek North areas 6 and 10 and that area as something that is within their boundaries as well, so that there's some incentive to view that and those projects as being within the boundaries of their district,
Mayor.
essentially.
Plum Creek North is.
Mayor, I agree with
Right.
you.
The Plum Creek North is in those boundaries.
It
Off
is.
Colors Crossing. It's between Colors Crossing and 1626.
So just to keep a public record of what we're doing, Sherry's made the move to change the boundary over to 1626 for district, what should be District 2. It doesn't change the deviation at all, and it doesn't seem to change the numbers.
Yeah, there's no one who lives in
Yeah,
those
okay,
areas
so,
yet.
yeah, but that's what it would look like.
It puts ACC in District 6.
I'm ACC's lawyer, so.
What's that?
I'm ACC's general counsel. Do you want me to ask them where they want to be?
I don't think they care.
They don't vote. It's fine.
Mayor, I would say that it does, from a geographic view of the maps, it does help to blend where you can, and that 1626 would make sense. It does create that incentive, because I can speak in District 2, the downtown being part of District 2, there is an incentive there, that's a belonging of the district.
And then what if we moved if we expanded District 4 into the commercial areas where District 6 goes way down west of I-35? Maybe we make all of that District 4 up to, we could start with Marketplace and maybe see what that might look like. So, but you could
But
also.
doesn't that make District 4 more populous?
Well, I guess it's not the residential. I don't know how much residential there is. There's a little bit, but I don't know if that's because District 4 already has all the way up to the rail line, which is the Tenorio subdivision there. So really, everything we're talking about is commercial. It's predominantly commercial.
Well,
I kind of agree with Zena.
Workplace would be there, and that senior complex across from Target is there. So there'll be some commercial in that area. I mean,
Yeah.
residential in that area.
I agree with Zuniga that I like the idea of all three districts sharing in the downtown
That
community.
is a good point. I'm just saying if we were going to add so much commercial to District 6, basically District 6 has all the commercial outside of the downtown that we have. So it's in terms of the commercial valuation of the city, if we move it to 1626, then, I mean, it's just a lot of, pretty much all of our economic development from a commercial standpoint is within those boundaries. So I was thinking, well, we have that particular area that was just highlighted right there. We could make that District 4, not, and that would add back some commercial value to District 4.
Yeah, that
But
certainly
it takes
would be
away
fine, but-
District 6 touch of downtown. But there's really, in terms of what District 6 has in the actual downtown, there's not that much. District 4 and District 2 have the majority of it. Tobias,
so-
what do you think about what we're kind of working on here? Hang on a second.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. Gotcha.
That, if you can hear me, I kind of agree on that. So if you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
I understand where you're trying to maybe make it more robust to where you can have a line of adding District 4 with 1626 more to the west. You want to be able to have equal commercial growth in each district. But I guess we got to look at what Dr. Harris is saying about population.
You could move it. I think it would be fine. We'll find out.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind having more commercial in my district. Yeah, it's very little commercial in my district. We even have trouble finding a place to have coffee that's in my district.
Council, if you want, we can make that move and see what it does.
Well, hold on for a second. I think Michael was trying to say something. It's a little bit difficult to manage. Michael, go ahead.
So, yeah, if you don't mind, I just wanted to kind of clarify, just 'cause I know as our city continues to grow in population, it's going to grow more up north. And more to the east as well. So it's just a matter of figuring out which boundary lines, in my opinion, are we going to use the railroad or are we going to use 1626? But as far as Silverado and that, I think it should all be one neighborhood for one district, so that way there's no confusion.
Yeah. Well, I say let's look at that going to District 4. But then also, I think I'd like to talk about is there a way for us to get more commercial in District 2? Like, is there a way to push District 2 up into some of those commercial zones up there maybe? And we may just get so far out of whack that it's just not possible, but.
Oh, because 4's already, yeah, okay, I did the math backwards up here. So moving everything south of 1626 does put us way over the deviation, population-wise.
So you would need to, if we did that, you would need to add to population, you'd need to take population away from District 4.
Yes.
Okay.
And if the population is mostly more southerly there, then maybe we kind of find another demarcation point.
Well, there's population, a good bit right now along Marketplace in that senior living. That's a nice chunk of people right there. And then Burleson.
Yeah, so.
What if we put east of
what's that
Burleson
street?
into District 2?
I can't tell. Burleson.
Up to like Marketplace.
Well, that's helpful. That actually tells us how many people are in each block. That's using Burleson as a boundary.
Of course, that would add to,
Well, but that went to District 6. Mark was saying District 2.
I meant 6.
You meant 6?
I meant
Oh,
6.
okay, okay.
Tobias's district.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would add a little bit of population there. I wouldn't mind doing that. But Michael had a good point in that there's a lot of residential projected for his district that we don't have online yet, although I think you took that into consideration when you were doing the maps.
We were trying to, but just on this conversation, it's that block right there has 384 people, so I don't know if there's a high
Not a big
density.
impact.
It's a big mixed-use project.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it seems to be some sort of
I
high
don't know
density
exactly
project
where
there.
it is, but.
So maybe that,
Well, we've entitled a lot of multifamily along Marketplace back there. In fact, there's where you show 0 behind Kyle Center Drive and City Lights Drive, that if you see it all, there's like 3 or 4 zeros there.
Yeah, yeah.
It's second from the bottom.
Right.
Down, right, up 1, down 1.
Yeah,
Up,
there.
but I'm saying specifically the one above that.
yeah.
That, right there. I think we got it. But yes, that
They're
section
having their own
there,
conversation back
That
there. Yeah.
section is entitled for a significant amount of apartments as well. So.
And the
I
one
don't know why
below
it shows a
City
0.
Lights is where word goes.
Yeah, everything that was just highlighted is much more than 384 souls.
Or will
Right,
be.
but right now, using the data we have to use, it's a 0.
Yeah.
But
Because we didn't include word place.
You're saying that, but by adding that space, but it is a future mixed-use district that Plum Creek
Yeah.
just does not have, with the exception of, or I'm sorry, District 4 doesn't have, with the exception of the brick and mortar district. It makes, the way that it's set up, it makes the District 4 representative, their singular commercial area of focus is brick and mortar, is kind of the point. Whereas if everyone sort of, the districts have their own particular flavor of commercial, and I'm just trying to think of how do we change it up so that each council member has multiple commercial spaces that they feel vested in their success, so that it doesn't, so that we're not pitted against each other, but that our incentives are aligned.
I understand. I would not mind having more commercial. That's true.
Well, but
I
the
don't
thing is,
think, though, that
those
that's an
proposals.
issue with this council.
All of these
we have to have
projects
that
that are
block.
in that highlighted section are all mixed use. So they are apartments, but they're also ground floor retail. A lot of ground floor.
I mean, yeah,
retail
there's
coming
ways
in.
to shift like that.
Yeah, like I said, I wouldn't mind having, but
Yeah, so go ahead, we're gonna move, the block with, currently has a lot of population back into District 6.
Well, that's gonna be crazy.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have
It's
to.
not a very clean line.
No, we'll have to do some adjusting. Again, because there's zeros there, it's, but as you're
can
saying,
see
in
the
the
map,
future, it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
gonna be a zero.
It's definitely not
Yeah.
gonna be a zero.
And the blocks, as you can see, I think I mentioned in one of my earlier presentations, sometimes the blocks are just weirdly shaped. Because that block with all the population is really long. But I'm assuming the population is in a discrete section of it and the rest of it. So if that was multiple blocks, it would be easier to adjust.
yeah, I like, for District 4, I'm fine with that map. I do like having the neighborhoods be unified. I do think they're between 2 and 6 at the bottom to the south. It looks like it splits a neighborhood.
Yeah, the boundary between 2 and 6 has always been confusing because 6 has all of Steeplechase Park. But I think District 2 has always sort of felt like Steeplechase Park was a part of their
Oh, but
district.
yeah, as long as 6 stays where it is, we can't really adjust 4 very much.
That's true,
Yeah.
Mayor. I mean,
Yeah, like
you're closer to that area in District 2 than, 6.
And since we are gonna be adding Lake Kensington, I mean, it might make sense to put that Steeplechase Park wholly in District 2.
That could we look at that, sir? See
Yeah.
If you could give that area to 2 with the numbers?
We're about to start playing that game. I see there's a lot of population there.
Yeah.
See how oddly shaped that block is? That you just highlighted in yellow now? That's all one census block for reasons that don't make any sense. 'Cause it like completely wraps around the other part of the neighborhood.
So that yellow block all has to stay together then, is what
Yeah, right.
So that 583 in that yellow block
Mhm.
is including two-step development? No. It's not.
Part of it.
But it should be.
Yeah,
I mean,
the east part
it's
of it.
drawn, yeah, it's drawn for that.
So we can move that to 2, I guess?
And like the
Or
zeros
move-
there.
Move that to 6?
That are in District 2, those aren't zeros either. That's.
I move it, yeah.
That's multifamily in the two-step project that shows a
Right.
zero.
Yeah, so that's,
That one.
we're still good. Yeah, see, we can't isolate those, so those blocks have to go too. And then we have to give up some from District 6, and we could do that over, it's not a lot of people though, along the highway there, between the highway and the railroad track.
So it brings District 6 more into the downtown.
Yeah, what about if we move that southern part of the narrow strip into 4?
Into 4?
Or 4 or so, well, you guys tell me, where would you want that to move to?
Well, it's in 4 right now. Or some of it is.
Yeah, I'm just talking about that discrete section there. That makes it worse, but then what we have to do is,
Center Street's a good divider down there. You don't really want to mess with that. That's bifurcates the hometown.
basically we need to take some away from 2 and add it to
6.
It's so annoying. We have to take some away from 4 and move it to 2.
Right, yeah, so that move there to add that to 4 wasn't the right thing. That's gonna make it worse.
Yeah.
It's like leave that in 6, but add
Steeplechase to 2.
add steeplechase to 2.
Right. That's a weird look on that steeplechase part between 2 and 6. It doesn't look very defined.
Like everything south of that red line could go to 2.
That red line's the,
The steeplechase, the one that navigates
leave
through steeplechase.
steeplechase-
yeah, that's the creek.
The creek, yeah.
Go ahead, Michael. Did you have something?
Yes.
Go ahead.
If you move District 2 to Steeplechase Park, that might confuse, because you want to be able to, I guess I'm looking at keeping neighborhoods together, including parks. So, because you don't want,
So let's make steeplechase the divider.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
you'll have confusion later on. I think whenever there is an issue, you'd have to reach out to a specific council member for different things.
How does that work right there? I like that steeplechase park dividing.
Yeah, that really messes
Keep
the,
Prairie Creek again in District 2.
that really messes the deviation up, but we can adjust that by moving elsewhere.
So we could move 6 down and then 2 kind of over on this side. Have to be a lot.
Well, it's pretty dense in that area.
It also, by pushing 2 up further, it makes it less that District 2 is just focused on the 150 and gives them a little more of a central city of, viewpoint. If you added more to District 2, like the 481 block, and then moved District 6 further down the east, where you've got the 394, and then you've got Gristmill, that's, Bunton. There's a lot of future development there. You could get a lot more of District 6 numbers pumped up with that section. And then it's sort of like this. So you're pushing District 2 up into District 6 along I-35.
Was assuming.
Bunton is our divider, pretty much, right?
It currently is, but this
I
would
was always
change.
assuming Lehman was always in District
Yeah.
6, but according to this map, District 2.
Layman,
Yeah.
and can you go, the 10 as well?
Yeah, that gets us back into balance with what was just
Okay,
done.
but there's one more to grab there at the end. Yeah, where that number 1 is right now. Yeah, that one.
That's not, okay, make sure it's not somebody's house. Still good? So that actually works from a numbers perspective.
So you're pushing District 6 to the west up north. You're pushing District 4 to the east in the middle. You're pushing District 2 north central, and you're pushing District 6 south and east a little bit. So everybody's sort of shifting a little.
Yeah, it's kind of a
But
turn.
it keeps the spirit of having an east-west. District 6 is thinking about both sides of the highway. District 2 is thinking about both sides of the highway. But District 2 also is now being pulled further north, all the way to Steeplechase, and gets more commercial along I-35. I still think District 6 will have the lion's share of the commercial, but maybe that's a little more balanced.
Which district will have the lion's share
6.
of commercial?
Mm-hmm. It has everything east of 1626 and 2/3 of the interstate.
It doesn't show it with anything. 6 it doesn't show four, oh, six. You're talking about six. I'm getting confused.
Six.
Never mind,
Yeah.
never mind.
The way they numbered them, 1, 2, and 3 was throwing me off. too.
It's a problem with the software. It has to have sequential numbers, and since you guys do evens, it doesn't work right. I agree, it's not ideal.
I still wish there was a way to get more commercial into District 4. But I don't like the idea of taking it from up north. I like 6 going to 1626. I just wish 6 didn't have as much, basically south of 1626.
I think that might be something that we're gonna have to wait on until the next census, because then we'll have POP kind of in two-step and in other stuff coming in that maybe we could adjust it.
But we've
better at
already
that point.
identified multiple of those projects that are in, pretty much in everyone's district that aren't accounted for here that we're working on.
Right,
But we
but
don't
big-
know that those projects are gonna actually go off.
No,
That-
but because
the
we don't have the
bar shop and Olds track-
population, like, we don't even have the current population, right? So the stuff that's already grown since 2020, we don't have.
Is there a way to add more District 4 up around the Target, Lowe's,
That's what I was thinking.
Cava?
Move
you
that
know?
over to 35, north of, yeah, south of 1626, north of Burleson.
That.
Oh, in here.
Well, that's where we had that
Along
384 block,
Marketplace?
and that was the issue.
one long block that.
Can you zoom back into it where we can see the population numbers?
There's not much.
One thing you guys might want to think about is working with the census to play with the blocks a little better, to give us more discrete moving pieces.
No, further south.
Yeah, scroll south.
Yeah.
There was a whole lot of zeros in there, in that 384.
All right, can you add that back to District 4?
The 384.
Yeah, but where would we take away from District 4? Where could we add to District? Well, you'd have to add to both.
You want to add population, or do you want to add undeveloped, I'm using air quotes, undeveloped?
Well, we're trying to think about how do we keep a clean line? How do we give that block to District 4? Basically the 384 and then everything to I-35. How do we give that to District 4 and keep it in balance?
We have to move 6 over to there, yeah, that area.
The Tenorio subdivision, how much is all of that? That might do it.
I kind of like the idea of using Burleson as a boundary.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the Tenorio go into District 6.
So that takes all of the downtown area out of 4?
No, it wouldn't take all, it's just the Tenorio subdivision and along Old Highway 81, which are actually isn't District 4 anyway, it's
Right,
District 6.
no, it isn't.
Yeah,
But-
just like that.
Oh, I see.
What if we finished Burleson on District 6? So those final,
Because we're going by
7.
population numbers.
so, yeah, right there. So to keep Burleson as the dividing line, we would add those into District 6.
Those 7 blocks.
Those 7 blocks right there.
That makes sense.
And then we could add, do we need to add to 2 after we do all that? What are the
Yeah,
numbers?
that's showing a deviation on 2, a negative, is that 5.9 percentage? Was District 2
Well, District 2
overpopulated?
here is District 4 in reality.
Oh.
It's the biggest lot. Yeah, look up in the right-hand corner is the total deviation. And that's, we're under the 10 again, so that map works.
So what's happening?
What
to-
happens if we add to District 2 from this? Like, would that help, or would that put us out of compliance?
Taking from 4 is what we need to do. So if we move
You need to
2 up
take
in-
from 4.
If you move 2 up into 4,
Yeah.
that would probably be okay. 4 is the one that's too big. You can see it's like 5 over. Everybody else is a little under.
Yeah, it's a.
So if you took from the bottom and took some of 2 into 4, you could get there.
Well, I was trying to add along I-35 for 2. So,
Yeah,
but
for 4, if you take much more of that downtown area, if you take much more of that downtown area off of 4, that changes the minority or the Hispanic population in 4, which is already really low. It makes it
we
even
need
lower.
it, yeah.
Right now, we still have 2 strong Hispanic districts, but District 4 is generally becoming less minority than Plan A, but
It is.
not by much, though. It was 39.07 in Plan A, and it's 38.47, so.
Is there a way to put more District 2 further up I-35 so that instead of it running along Philomena, like it runs that, there's no real road, but on the east side, but yes, further up I-35 to give District 2 more of that future commercial space? No, the other side.
Yeah, we got, no, down south. Between, well, on this map, 1 and. The others. Yeah, we got down.
Yeah, right there. Yeah, put that in District 2 or number 1. Eesh, all right.
A little bit over.
So what do,
We would need to either lose some more out of 4 or put some more into,
is there more to add? Can you go down? Can you pan further south?
Is there anything connecting further south that we would want to? No, they don't connect down there.
Well, can you just pan south so we can see the bottom end? Keep going? Yes. All right. So what about like that 541 there? What is that? I'm trying to, what is the line that's separating 2 and 6 there? Is that a road?
Maybe that's census block. It looks like it's following a river, honestly. Or a creek.
That 1201, that's 1 block? Oh, that's such a terrible district.
That puts me in District 6 now.
That goes into Waterleaf, you're right.
think so.
All right, we can't, that's insane. All right, all right, we can't do that
I know
one.
y'all want me out, but
Census
y'all want me out
geography.
this bad?
We went too far.
The census geography does not work for us down there.
But you're at large. That
Oh,
doesn't
that's
matter.
true.
He may have
he wants to be
aspirations, though. Everybody wants a single-member district.
It's a backup plan.
All right, well, I like that as it currently is, but I would, I wish that there was a way, we need to add more, the zeros of those commercial districts into District 4. So 1626 blocks south, yeah, those right there.
Yeah.
Realizing that next time that's going to put 4 way over, and we're going to have to adjust back. But-
Not if it's
It
commercial.
may or may not. I
Well,
mean,
but you said there's some high density already going in there.
yes,
There
but there's
could be.
also high density going into other areas that are marked 0 all over this thing.
Okay.
I've probably seen 6 of them so far.
Yeah.
But none of them are, sure things. They're just
that as a boundary?
entitlements.
I like that.
What is can you zoom in on the,
that
basically
road is?
right there where your cursor is, except to the right a little, where the new boundaries,
Scroll in there so we can see what the
yeah,
boundary is.
on Marketplace, along Marketplace. Yeah, right there. What are the road situations? All right, so Marketplace. We should add the left 0 along Marketplace to District 4. It's currently in 6,
Okay.
right
Yeah,
there.
that one.
That should go to District 4. what if we added the 39 so that we made Burleson the hard boundary?
It should still work. Yeah, it's a little closer to 10, but we're still there.
All right, can you zoom in on that left? There's 2 zeros. It makes it a little weird. Can you zoom all the way in to those 2 small zeros to the right of the 39? Back where you were, where we were just adjusting, there's a 39 number, and then there's 2 zeros directly to the right of it along I-35. Can you zoom in even further on those 2?
Oh, the 2 little ones? Yeah.
All right. Can you keep going on, zooming in even further on those 2 zeros where Burleson, the end of Burleson? Right there. That last 0 could probably stand to go in District 6 just to keep it clean. Right there. Yep. There you go.
Yeah. That way the road is a better boundary.
All right, what do y'all think about that? Now we can zoom back out and look at it on the whole.
Don't you have a very disproportionate color now in demographics now? If this is real data, 51%.
It's 2 Hispanic majority districts.
I think they're all very Hispanic now, aren't they?
No, just 2 of them.
No.
2 are,
6 and 2 are, but they are.
4 is not.
Yeah, the question is, would you rather have 2 Hispanic majority districts or just 1 in order to get more Hispanics into District 4? That's open-ended. I don't know the answer to that question.
I don't know.
I mean, the problem is.
I've heard people argue both sides.
Yeah, the starting point for us, the current map, you've got 2 Hispanic majority districts, so. So if we're gonna go away from that, we'd have to have a really good reason.
And be very creative with the drawing of the map, given.
The census blocks.
Yes.
Scroll in, just so we can kind of, yeah. Yeah, let's just see what it looks like.
So voting age, the districts were pretty even, percentage-wise.
That looks pretty clean.
It's explainable. Yeah, awesome, thanks.
Brian, is there action being proposed for this? I mean, it has to go through a series of public hearings, I would
Right,
assume.
so not for today. What we're looking for, we wanted to have this interactive
Yeah.
experience so we could draw all of these. And then what we would do is put this on a future agenda for a public hearing and action. Is there 2 readings, Amy, or required of 1?
I think it's a resolution, but it's definitely a public hearing,
It's definitely a public hearing.
and then it's usually, then we adopt it. But what we would do is if you guys are happy with this map, we're going to call this one Exhibit Plan B, or Sample Plan B. And this is going to be the one that we're going to present as the proposed map for the public hearing. We'll put it up on the website so public can look at it, so we'll have it ready to go.
Do big maps, we'll get you big maps, we'll get big maps for the public.
Right.
Councilmember
clear
Tobias,
that-
do you have any more comments? Are you good with this?
Michael, could you hear that? Or do you have any additional comments?
I think that's a good idea to do the Plan B, so that way residents can kind of start seeing what we're doing.
And then
If you can hear me.
we had you, yes, sir. And just for the record, to be clear, all of these districts, any council member that lived in these current districts that were representing these are represented in these drawings, correct, for the record? Okay,
Yes, we did not draw
That
any
was-
incumbents out of their districts.
all right, excellent.
Well,
Thank you.
we want to add anything to it, or we want to say, let's put this for a public hearing and see what folks have to say and move on? It's a big decision. I'm certain that if we spent more time, we could come up with more creative changes. But just as I said earlier, councils only get chances to do this every so often. In fact, there have been many council members to come and go and never got the chance to look at these lines. So I felt like we
I think this plan's
owe it
equitable.
to really look at this, you know.
Yeah, this is an equitable plan.
Okay.
And miraculously, you know, usually when you have this going on, there are real contentious discussions about where you draw the lines. And I think it's just a good example of how collaborative this council is, that we can talk about moving squares here, moving squares there. Does it maintain the population? Does it maintain the retail? Does it maintain the diversity? And without having big conflicts on that.
I'd just like to add that even though we have at-large members, by this map, what I'm seeing is it makes even single members have to be representative of everyone in the city on each side of the highway or east-west, whatever, southwest, northwest. So it's a very, like Dr. Laura said, fair in my view from the geographic standpoint, and it gives everyone that incentive to work for the better developments, better housing, because it's not just a single district issue, it's the whole city now that we're all accountable for. And you have to listen to people that are not in your neighborhood but may live on the other end of the spectrum of the highway. So I like the way this map has been shaped, and I think y'all did a very good job in y'all's reasonings for wanting to redraw. And everybody is sharing a major portion of a large investment project in the downtown in this map. So to that, I'm very pleased with.
I'm going to aim to get this on the agenda for April 15th for public hearing, and hopefully we can get it settled at that point.
Okay, I mean, if there's no hurry, we might even just have an initial public hearing that doesn't have an ordinance attached, so that we're just, anyone who wants to come and speak can come and speak, and, you know.
We can do
and then
that.
maybe some notices to go out on Facebook that show the new boundaries, to make sure that folks see it in time to come to the meeting if they so choose, to give that feedback.
Yeah, you definitely want to publicize it as openly and broadly as you
Right,
can.
that's the point, yeah. It's just make sure that we're publicizing it, you know. Could
That
even
we
have
look for some kind of action in May, perhaps, depending
Yeah,
on the feedback.
it's better to get it right and take our time on this than it is to just rush it through. So I mean, I think what we've reasoned through is good, but there could be something that we haven't thought of that some folks who would be interested in taking a look at our proposal might want to give us that feedback, and it could be good feedback, frankly, so. All right, if there's nothing else.
Thank you all.
All right. Oh, we do have an item. Oh, I was
You-
about to.
you've got more to do.
Oh.
I'm out. I don't know whose
Okay.
laptop this is, but.
Yeah. All right, next
Leave
up
it
is agenda item number 4. Consider approval of a resolution authorizing a regional water supply lease agreement between Green Valley Special Utility District and the City of Kyle.
We do actually have a presentation on that, but I can, okay, just give us a second. Okay, there we go. So, good afternoon, Council. Mike Murphy, Director of Water Utilities. And so, a little background, what we're asking for. This is the Green Valley Special Utility District SUV water lease agreement with the City of Kyle. And we've already talked about it a couple of times today. This is a very positive thing, I think, for the City of Kyle. We've been able, with the city manager's leadership on this, to move at a very rapid pace on this. These things, as you guys know better probably than anybody, this doesn't happen as fast as what we're turning this around. And so bringing it up at one of our board meetings, working with Graham, helping us draft the agreement, we were able to move this forward really fast. Now, this agreement, I'm not reading off the slide here, but this agreement did go to the Green Valley SUD on the 27th, and they approved this agreement unanimously at their board. And so now we're bringing it to you for approval. And then once we go through that process, then it'll have to go through the ARWA board for final approval, if that's right, Graham?
I'm not sure that it would require approval.
Okay. Even better, even quicker, but if it does, we'll make sure that that happens. So just a little history here, Kyle and Green Valley, through the membership through Green Valley's membership with Canyon Regional Water Authority, we're able to sponsor, our sponsors of the ARWA, ARWA, which has a Carrizo Aquifer Groundwater Supply Project. Kyle anticipates a need for additional Carrizo water, and Green Valley does not have a need for that water. So we were able to strike agreement with them, especially on this Phase 1B water, which is going to be about 650,000 gallons per day. So as part of this deal, the 730 acre feet, 652,000 gallons per day, in addition to when 1C, 1D Carrizo comes online, that's going to add another 772,000 gallons per day, for a total of 1,545 acre feet per year, which is close to 1 million gallons of water for us that we don't currently have. Now, we're scheduled to take delivery of the Carrizo water, Phase 1B from ARWA, just as soon as we sign this agreement. And so that's going to be a really big deal. So we add that to some of the water that we're already working with ARWA and GBRA on, which is about, 400 or 500,000 gallons of water per day. Add that to this, and it's going to make up the gap that we're sort of missing right now through when ARWA comes online in June. We're already going to start taking, we're already taking about 300 to 400,000 gallons a day right now through ARWA. That's going to our GBRA Alliance pumping site.
So I think that's probably pretty important to underscore. So what you just said is that the gap, because of the iron production that we're looking between May and the end of June, this is an agreement that we put in place as a part of the City of Kyle's commitment to solving the iron issue, that we identified with another party to take on their excess water that they don't need at this point in time, while also covering their costs for that solving of that iron issue, that costs which we intend to recover through action, hopefully. But because of that, we're going to be able to make up that gap. So we still are, because of these agreements, we still are on schedule starting in May when the pipeline gets finished to be able to deliver the full amount. But without this, we wouldn't.
That's right. We would still have a gap. And there's really two parts of that. We're able to fill in the gap, but also once we start taking that full amount of water from ARWA, then we have the ability to extend our agreement with Green Valley beyond that, hopefully 2 to 4 years beyond that. So that's going to help us get all the way up to 2028, 2029, and maybe even further, because we'll have negotiation rights with Green Valley, and if they still don't have a need for that water, we're going to still take it.
Yep.
So it's sort of.
Well, what I want to say from that and from this proposal that you've had, and it was discussed in executive session, but just to say it publicly and on the record is just thank you, Mike and Brian in particular, for being very open to opportunities and capitalizing on the variety of situations that we've been facing with this super complex agreement, because you being proactive to find this water source is single-handedly probably going to save the City of Kyle a lot of grief this summer. And so it's just to be noted that the way that you are engaging this water situation, since you both got here, you took it very seriously, and you put us on notice that this is a problem, but that you also didn't just pass the buck. You took it on as a challenge to solve. And if it wasn't for that mindset that you had, you would not have identified this. We would not have had this solution in place. And so I just want to very publicly state on the record that you both did a very fantastic job bringing this solution to us at exactly the moment that we needed it. So thank you.
Appreciate that. And it was literally, I think the city manager will agree with me and the assistant city manager, this was a huge team effort. There's a lot of work that went on behind the scenes, and working with Green Valley, I will say that they've been extremely cooperative and willing to work with us. So we really appreciate those folks over there also. So this is just, we've gone over this in the executive session. I don't know if we need to go through this again, but the three phases, we're gonna cover the expenses for fixed operation and maintenance. We're gonna cover the variable cost, and through the clarification process, we're gonna pay Green Valley's portion of that. So this is a really good deal. We've compared this with what we currently pay GBRA. Believe it or not, once you take out debt services from GBRA, it's almost identical as to what we're going to be paying per 1,000 gallons for this water. So it's a really good deal for the city. And intentionally, city of, not the city, but Green Valley did not charge us an adder fee for them handling this water. So that was a huge benefit and a really cooperative effort. And so this is just a breakdown of the cost for the next 3 years. And so we're pretty much guaranteed all of this water through 2027. And then we have 1 year adders after that in negotiating those. And then once 1C, 1D comes online, then we're looking at a 2-year agreement with negotiable 1 year adders onto that too. But we'll get deeper into that as that time gets closer. So the funding source is the Water Utility Fund and out of the Water Supply Cost Center. And Vez is here, so if you need any questions on that, he can address those for us. So option 1 is to approve the resolution, option 2, do not approve it. So our recommendation, obviously, is to approve this resolution and allow the city managers and the mayor to sign this agreement.
Mayor, you ready? I'd like to move approval of the resolution authorizing a regional water supply lease agreement between Green Valley Special Utility District and the city of Kyle.
Second.
All right, motion by Councilmember Harris, seconded by Councilmember McKinney that we approve agenda item number 4. Is there discussion on that motion? And Councilmember Tobias, you can vote with your hand. I'll keep an eye on it. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, there we
Thank you
go.
very much.
All opposed. All right, motion carries 6-0. Anything else? Motion to adjourn.
Thank you
I'm
for
gonna
your
take a
time.
picture of
Thank
that.
you so much.
All right, we are adjourned.
Question of what it was. It's frozen.